I moved forward without hesitation. A tremendous number of monsters filled my sight, swarming towards me, but I paid them no heed. As the monsters approached closer, the Black Knight at my right reacted. He smoothly drew his dark greatsword and launched a massive sword strike. Swoosh, crack. The monsters where the slash passed were obliterated without a trace. Above the knight's head, a small status window floated. Serene, Black Knight graduate rank, S. Following suit, the mage on my left side started chanting a series of spells softly. Soon, countless magic circles appeared above the monster horde, causing a series of explosions. Boom boom. Hong Hyana, Ruby Tower Master graduate rank, S. Thanks to the efforts of these two S-rank characters, the path was cleared, and I continued on my way. There were relentless attackers who still refused to give up and were coming at us from all sides, yet they were all repelled and annihilated before they could even get close. There was a priestess walking right behind me. It was all thanks to the powerful protective shield she maintained. Lee Seo, Saintess graduate rank, S. In addition to this, if you look at the other party members, they were all plastered with S ranks as well. In a sense, it was all natural for the monster horde before us to give way before our power. As the pesky flies were swept away, the ruined temple came into my view. I kicked open the half-destroyed main gate and walked inside. In the center of the temple, there was an altar, and on it lay a gem emitting a sinister red light. I carelessly picked it up and tossed it over my shoulder, and a woman suddenly emerged from the shadows to catch it with utmost grace. Sharp fangs were protruding from the corners of her mouth. Carmilla, last vampire graduate rank, A. Flash. The gem that Carmilla caught emitted an explosive radiance. It gradually shrank in size and turned into a red mist before it was completely absorbed by her. Having absorbed the power of the gem, Carmilla opened her eyes. Carmilla, Vampire Queen graduate rank, S. I nodded in approval as I witnessed the scene. This makes the 1000th one. MMORPG Academy Dragon Slayer Academy. In this game, players grow through numerous incidents and accidents during their time at the academy. After graduation, they are tasked with subduing various boss monsters, including dragons, on the front lines. In this game, my role was that of a support. Why, among the many classes, did I choose to be a support? It was because this role was closely linked to my favorite content in the game, hero cultivation. I would take a first-year newbie NPC, freshly enrolled in the academy, and develop them into the strongest graduates and then into S-rank heroes. And the support class was the best fit for this task. Though it was a bit difficult in the beginning, it is not easy for the player himself to become S-rank, let alone elevate an NPC to S-rank. However, I poured everything I had into it and eventually succeeded in raising one, then two NPCs to S-rank. As the number of heroes under my command grew, so did my expertise and the pace of my work. At some point, other players began referring to me as the S-rank hero factory. At the same time, my own power also grew stronger. My class remained that of a support, but as I became interested in and delved into the classes of the heroes I was raising, I unexpectedly became an expert in all kinds of fields. And so, Carmilla, who just achieved S-rank, was my 1000th hero. 1,000 S-rank heroes under my command. The skills I learned while nurturing them numbered in the thousands. Number 1 in the integrated rankings. The strongest support. That was me. But even someone like me had some worries. There's a lack of content. I had frequented the academy hundreds of times and nurtured 1,000 heroes. Among them were knights, warriors, mages, shamans, priests, explorers, alchemists, blacksmiths, merchants, and even farmers, coachmen, and fishermen. All kinds of professions were included. Having raised all of them to S-rank, I found that there was nothing left. To be more precise, all that was left were ordinary friends who were duplicates of the heroes I had already raised. Should I raise the duplicates too? There are already many duplicates. But isn't that better than doing nothing? While I was seriously thinking about this, a note-shaped icon flashed in the corner of my vision. This basically meant that an important notification had appeared. You have accomplished a great feat that no one else has before. 1000 S-rank graduates. You can now undertake a special quest. Prevent the world's destruction. Difficulty, X-rank. Caution, this is a reincarnation quest. Accept above decline. I had some experience in clearing S-rank quests several times before. Even for me, who was ranked first, they were not easy tasks. Therefore, the level above that, the X rank, would surely be even more difficult. Moreover, it was a reincarnation quest, a quest that temporarily resets almost all of a player's stats, equipment, and skills to their initial state. Naturally, it's a level higher in difficulty than a regular quest that players could undertake with their full strength. How absurdly difficult would the quest be if the reincarnation condition was added to the X rank difficulty? But to me, that didn't matter. So, S wasn't the highest rank after all. The important revelation I just had was that above the S rank, there exists the even higher X rank. If X rank quests exist, then X rank items and skills must also exist. And X rank heroes too. My desire to collect them was ignited. I just found the key to raising even stronger heroes. To give up because the difficulty seems too high, that would be akin to denying myself. I chose the accept option without hesitation, and then, the quest begins. I entered the world of the game. I found myself in the heart of a forest, with trees lined up densely on all sides. This was a common sight at Dragon Slayer Academy. For instance, I felt a gentle breeze blowing from somewhere, yet the way it tousled my hair and even the faint smell of grass carried by the wind. This situation I was in right now felt neither like a game nor like a dream. If my guess was right, could this be it? The setting where I became a character of the game that you only see in novels. I guess I have now become the protagonist of such a novel. Perhaps this was due to the X-level difficulty. It would be a lie to say I wasn't disconcerted. But what could I do? It was the quest I had chosen. And even if I had known this would happen, I would have certainly accepted the quest. The opportunity to nurture an X-rank hero held that much significance for me. I quickly accepted the situation and moved forward. Status window. Kim Ho. Skills none. Traits none. Equipment casual clothes F. Inventory 5 silvers. A streamlined status window greeted me. Everything I used to have was essentially gone. The diverse S-rank skills and traits, the legendary equipment that covered my body, and even the 1,000 S-rank heroes I had amassed were now non-existent. It was as if I had just created a new character from scratch. Well, it seemed that, as a support class, I was left with nothing but a tough road ahead. I shouldn't be disappointed just yet. Reincarnation quest perks will be awarded. Even though it was termed reincarnation, they wouldn't just throw me into an X-level quest but naked. Instead of a complete reset, players are given a few weapons as a minimal cushion. These are the reincarnation perks. These perks are determined by adding up existing the player's skills, traits, equipment, and achievements. And since there is nothing I haven't done in this game, a seasoned player like me was awarded some valuable perks. You have acquired the copy skill. You have acquired copy trait. You have acquired amplification F. You have acquired monarch F. Copy, amplification, and monarch. These were skills I enjoyed using because they were powerful and highly effective. The decline of my rank to F, which is a measure of growth, was somewhat painful. But it was an expected turn of events for a reincarnation quest. After all, I could always raise my rank again. Kim Ho. Skills copy skill 0 above 1 amplification F. Traits copy trait 0 above 1 monarch F. Equipment casual clothes F. Inventory 5 silvers. As soon as I finished checking my status, a message popped up as if it had been waiting for me. Tutorial I. Objective, survive for 10 minutes. Reward, Dragon Slayer Academy new student kit. Time remaining 9:56. Without giving me a moment to catch my breath, the tutorial quest was thrust upon me. The goal was to stay on the run for 10 minutes. Usually, the tutorial would involve surviving 10 minutes on a beginner's training ground among the lowest tier monsters, like goblins or trolls. However, my current location was in the middle of an unknown forest. Boom thud. As soon as I thought of that, heavy footsteps rang out. The sound of trees cracking and breaking added to the commotion. Soon, a large monster emerged, tearing through the underbrush. An ogre already. Grr. The rank of an ogre is between C and D. This was excessively high for a tutorial. The creature was holding a club as big as a human body in one hand. As soon as our eyes met, it swung the club at me without hesitation. I quickly moved to the side, and the club, with a chilling whoosh, embedded itself in the ground. Boom. I ducked to avoid the club as it was swung horizontally. As a CD rank monster, the ogre was so strong and agile that I couldn't be compared to it in terms of physical abilities. Still, the ogre's movements were monotonous, so if I could anticipate its moves well, I should be able to dodge them. I'd like to take it down if possible. After all, defeating something you're not supposed to usually yields greater rewards. but the disparity in physical abilities seemed too vast to overcome. Should I at least give it try then? Copy trait. For a solo support struggling to learn proper attack techniques, this was like a ray of hope. It was a technique that literally copied the abilities of the opponent. The skill copy skill replicated opponent's skills, while copy trait copied their traits. However, there were some restrictions. I had to witness the opponent's skill or trait in action and correctly identify its name and rank. That was why I had been dodging the ogre's attacks until now. From what I could estimate, this creature possessed C-rank traits. Activate copy trait. Registering the target's trait Super Strength C in the slot. Copy trait 1 above 1. 1. Super Strength C. A surge of power flooded through my body. The ogre must have sensed the change in my body as it grew confused. But that lasted only for a moment, and it resumed swinging its club wildly. I deftly dodged its attacks while closing in. Hump. I landed a punch deep into its abdomen. Once again, I deftly twisted my body, and the club whooshed past me, missing by a mere paper's width. Then, I drove another deep punch into the ogre's abdomen. After repeating this several times, I clicked my tongue softly. TSK. The strikes felt solid in my hand, yet they failed to inflict any serious damage. Add when I checked the remaining time. Tutorial I. Objective, survive for 10 minutes. Time left 6:03. It was already nearly halfway through. With enough time, I would have pummeled it all day to defeat it, but unfortunately, the tutorial was about to end soon. And then, at that moment, Ruoar. The ogre's face became pale, and it trembled as if it was scared of something. Then it hastily turned its back to me and fled the scene. The ogre was not the kind of monster to flee after taking just a couple of punches. So why did it react like that, just as I wondered for the reason? Ghu! A deafening roar erupted overhead. As soon as I raised my head to look upward, a huge flying object whooshed past. Grararara! The roar sounded again. This time, I could clearly see the identity of the flying object. It was the strongest creature in the Dragon Slayer Academy game and an S-rank boss monster. The dragon. And not just one, but two of them. The creature covered in blood-red scales was known as the Red Dragon, while the one with a dark blue body and 3 horns on its forehead was the Blue Dragon. Each one of them possessed the element of flame and lightning, respectively. And now that I had no means of resistance, these dragons were akin to flying natural disasters. Perhaps I should say that it was a silver lining in an otherwise dire situation. The two of them seemed more interested in attacking each other than in paying any attention to me. Grorara. Guu. Every clash between the two dragons sent shockwaves throughout the area. I quickly hugged a thick tree nearby to brace myself. It was a very uncomfortable experience to be rocked back and forth by the shockwaves. Yet a look of excitement was spreading across my face. This is an opportunity, and not just any opportunity, but a golden one that might never come again. How often does one get to witness to final boss-level monsters fighting right in front of them? If I use copy now to acquire their powerful traits, it will be helpful for a long time to come. The tide of battle was turning against the Red Dragon. With each clash, it was receiving one-sided injuries. Just moments ago, the blue one grazed past and left long claw marks on the Red Dragon's wing. Sparks of blue lightning crackled from the wound. The Red Dragon roared in pain. Guu, are you angry? Then use your magic, just once. As if hearing my thoughts, a red magic circle appeared near the Redo Dragon, unleashing dozens of fireballs at the blue one. The latter didn't bother to dodge or defend, as it took the full brunt of the attack. Yet, astonishingly, there wasn't a single scorch mark on its body. Perfect. I almost shouted in joy. This is because I met the conditions to use copy. The trait activated when the blue dragon took the magic attack head-on was elemental resistance. This was a trait that greatly reduced the damage taken from all elemental types such as ice, lightning, and wind, and since it was a dragon, its rank was naturally S. Activate copy trait. Registering the target's trait elemental resistance S in the slot. Copy trait 1 above 1. 1. Elemental resistance S. Since I only had one slot available, I had to relinquish the super strength trait I copied from the ogre earlier. Still, it was an S rank rather than a C rank. I easily made the decision to discard the former and switch to elemental resistance. Now, it's time to leave. I've seen everything there was to see. The slot for copy skill was still empty, but it would be pointless to steal a skill from dragons. The dragons were primarily using high-grade magic, which required an equivalent amount of mana power, meaning that without a high-grade core, Those skills would be unusable for me. So, without any regrets, I decided to leave the scene. Guu, the red dragon, who was on the receiving end of the attacks, seemed to decide that this could not go on, and abruptly retreated with a powerful flap of its wings. It opened its jaws wide and then sucked in the surrounding air and mana at a frightening speed, causing its belly to swell like an inflated balloon. It seems to be preparing for a final move. The blue dragon responded in kind as it began gathering mana round the horns on its forehead. A huge sphere of lightning began to grow in size, crackling with energy. And there I was, watching from below, when I realized something important. They were both preparing for their most powerful blow, the mightiest blow a dragon can deliver. That would be its dragon breath. And what would happen when two breaths of different elements collided? They would clash and cause an explosion. Then what about me who was standing below? I'm going to get caught up in this, right? A wise person would have already been running at full speed upon realizing this. The farther you got away from here, the greater your chance of survival. But I was not one to die so easily. Again, my experimental spirit kicked in. After all, my elemental resistance was S rank. As long as I don't get hit head on, I should be able to survive. The dragons wouldn't aim their breaths at me, would they? I decided to lean back against an old tree and watch the situation unfold. Soon, both dragons had accumulated energy to their limits, and without precedence, they both unleashed their breaths at each other. Gwao, Pajiji. A red beam of flame and a blue pillar of lightning collided, creating a huge explosion. A white flash of light engulfed the area in an instant, and my vision turned dazzlingly white. It's getting quite warm, even though I should be somewhat within the range of their breaths. I felt only a mild warmth, and that was it. It was all thanks to my elemental resistance, which was on par with the dragons. This confirmed one thing for sure. Even if I were to die in the future, at least I wouldn't perish by burning, freezing, or electrocution. Of course, there were still various dangers remaining, like being pierced by an arrow or decapitated by a sharp sword. But reducing the risks to this extent was quite something, wasn't it? As I pondered these rather trivial thoughts, the white flash gradually subsided. Swoosh! The landscape before me was drastically different from before the dragons unleashed their breaths. In less than the time it took to drink a glass of water, the heart of the forest had turned into a barren wasteland. The large trees, which were probably hundreds of years old, were now reduced to small, burning embers, and the dragons responsible for this devastation had already flown off to an unknown destination, nowhere to be seen. Time remaining, 0 o'clock. The remaining time of the tutorial had conveniently run out just then. Tutorial I completed. You have survived for the required time. Reward, Dragon Slayer Academy New Student Kit. Dragon Slayer Academy Uniform D. Convenient for daily activities and enchanted with D-rank defensive magic. Student ID. Proof of being a student at the Dragon Slayer Academy. Grants access to various facilities of the Academy. Train ticket. Valid for boarding the train to the Dragon Slayer Academy. Suddenly, I realized that my casual clothes had almost turned into tatters. After all, the entire area was completely burned down and turned into a wasteland, so it wouldn't make sense for the casual clothes, the lowest level item, to remain intact. As soon as I changed into the school uniform, the next quest appeared. Tutorial 2. Objective, follow the arrow to the platform. Over 2,481 kilometers. A small arrow materialized before my eyes. It pointed in one direction like a compass, and below it, the remaining distance was displayed. I began to walk, following the direction indicated by the quest. As I walked, the scorched and bleak landscape gradually began to turn green again. I was moving out of the range of the dragon's breath. Then, in the distance, I faintly saw the silhouette of a person. It seemed like the other party also noticed me as they started coming straight towards me. The man greeted me first. Hello there. Hello. I haven't seen this one before. This face was unfamiliar even for me who knew every character of Dragon Slayer Academy by heart. A new character. Perhaps it was an effect of the X-rank quest. The man appeared to be around my age, yet his attire and sword reminded me of a warrior from a martial arts novel, though he looked somewhat shabby as if he had emerged from some deep, remote place. His strikingly handsome face radiated an aura that made his overall appearance look far from shabby. On seeing my school uniform, the young man's face lit up. Oh, that's the Dragon Slayer Academy uniform. Are you a freshman this year? Yes, are you as well? What a wonderful coincidence, I am as well. The man then took out a tie pin from his pocket. The color of the pin varied with each grade, and the one he produced was the same white color as the one I had on my uniform. It meant we were in the same grade. With an even more cheerful expression, he continued to introduce himself. My name is Go Hyan Woo. We might be in the same grade, but I'm probably a bit younger than Hyung. Feel free to speak casually to me. Sure, I'm Kim Ho. Kim Hyung. Huh, since we've met like this, why don't we travel together? That's fine by me. It wasn't a bad idea for me. On the way, I considered that encountering monsters would be a needless waste of time. Fortunately, this Go Hyan Woo had a sword, so it seemed sensible to ride along with him. I observed Go Hyan Woo, who was leading the way, with increased attention. From his stride to every minor movement, there was a remarkable restraint. This suggested he had undergone grueling training over many years. He's worth raising. At first glance, he appeared quite strong. With such potential, he could reach an A rank on his own. But with my help, achieving S rank seemed entirely feasible. Perhaps even beyond that. There was another thing that stood out. Around his waist hung a cheap iron sword, the kind one could find anywhere, and on his back, he carried a long, thin object tightly wrapped in cloth. Judging by its length and thickness, it was likely another long sword. Is that a long sword on your back? You've seen right. It's a sacred artifact of our sect. Why is it wrapped up so tightly? It was not just wrapped in cloth, but also heavily secured with iron chains, almost as if it were sealed. It seemed as if he had no intention of using it. Go Hyan Woo smiled bitterly and gently stroked the iron sword at his waist. Regrettably, I'm not yet qualified to unseal it. Until then, this iron sword remains my companion. Is that so? But worry not. So far, this sword alone has been more than enough, of course. I'm not sure how it will fare at the Dragon Slayer Academy, haha. His confident declaration suggested he had considerable skill. Go Hyan Woo pointed to the place I passed by and asked, by the way, Kim Hyung, did you come from over there? Yes, why do you ask? Just now, I saw 2 dragons flying around that area. They were there until a moment ago. They're gone now. Oh, seems I'm a bit late. I had hoped to catch a glimpse of them as I passed by. A deep sense of regret crossed Go Hyan Woo's face. Then, as if struck by a thought, he tilted his head. Did you see anything at that place, Kim Hyung? I saw as much as I needed to. Oh, how was it? I portrayed the battle between the 2 dragons as realistically as possible, adding just about 2% of embellishment to the tale. Go Hyan Woo listened with eyes shining like a child hearing tales of heroes' valor. And then, in the end, they started ripping into each other with their breaths. Breaths, what are those? Put simply, they're like secret techniques or ultimate moves. Ultimate moves, indeed. That must have been the massive explosion I saw earlier. Go Hyan Woo nodded thoughtfully. Then, seemingly struck by a new question, he asked again. So, Kim Hyung, did you witness this breath from a fairly close distance? If you call it close, yes, I did. Why do you ask? It's just that for an attack that caused such a huge explosion, you seem remarkably unscathed. It was definitely a point worthy of raising questions. If I had been close enough to witness 2 dragons exchanging blows and even their breaths, I should have been affected to some degree. Then how come there wasn't a single scratch on me? In such situations, it's beneficial to keep my cards hidden. I have a trick or two up my sleeve, just like that long sword on your back. I see, they say the world is teeming with mighty warriors, much like grains of sand, and yet, here I am, already crossing paths with you, Kim Hyung. If the chance rises, I'd like to ask you to teach me a thing or two. There will be plenty of opportunities in the future. For now, let's go. We're going to miss the train. Oh, look at me losing track of time. I completely forgot. Let's hurry. Go Hyan Woo took the lead with energetic strides. At Dragon Slayer Academy, various worldviews were intertwined. There could be a medieval fantasy city with swords and magic, and just a step away, you could find a martial arts world. And then, if you shifted your gaze slightly, modern buildings would catch your eye. Therefore, it wasn't strange that the platform in front of us was made up of ancient-looking pavilions. Fortunately, we made it in time. It's all thanks to Kim Hyung. There was a reason why Go Hyan Woo praised me. He wasn't particularly talented at finding his way. On the other hand, I just had to follow the quest arrows, so there was no chance of us getting lost. Still, this guy was helpful. Go Hyan Woo dealt with minor monsters we encountered on our path, so it wasn't a loss for me. The train had already arrived and was waiting on the platform, and I could see students in school uniform coming and going. We approached the station attendant. He appeared to be a middle-aged man in his 40s or 50s, with an unexpectedly full head of hair for his age. Moreover, his hair was so well kept that it gleamed and swayed neatly. Could that be a wig? With those doubts in mind, I handed over my ticket. The station attendant checked the tickets and looked us over before asking, "First year?" "Yes. First-year students should board the carriages from number 1 to 10. "Thank you." As we scanned the series of carriages, we soon spotted one marked with the number 10. The moment we stepped onto the train, a notification message popped up. Tutorial to completed. Tutorial 3. Objective: attend the entrance ceremony. Tip: make different friends on the train. The train to Dragon Slayer Academy was of the cabin type. The right half was a corridor for people to pass through, and the left half consisted of small rooms. Go Hyan Woo and I walked down the corridor, peering through the small windows on each cabin door. We were looking for an empty cabin, but it was difficult to find even an empty seat, let alone an empty cabin. It made sense, as students must have boarded at other platforms the train had passed through. We walked from carriage 10, peering and walking, until around carriage 8. Finally, Go Hyan Woo found a suitable cabin. Kim Hyung, there seems to be space here. Peeking inside, there was only one person. We slid the door open. The inside of the cabin was about 2.6 square meters in size. In the middle of the cabin, there was a small table with built-in seats facing each other around it. The arrangement was such that 4 people could sit in each cabin. A female student with light gray hair was lying face down on the window seat. When she sensed someone's presence, she slowly sat up. When I met the gray-haired girl's eyes, my first thought was that she was beautiful. Even among the many attractive men and women in Dragon Slayer Academy, she stood out as exceptionally beautiful. The instincts of men are indeed unavoidable. The next thing I noticed about her was that she looked to be sleepy, her languid face dripping with fatigue, and her half-closed eyes seemed to debate whether to fall back asleep. Although she had just woken up, I got the feeling that this was her usual state. Lastly, my long experience as a collector whispered to me, "This is a raw gem." It was just a vague intuition at the moment, but characters like her usually reached S tier without much difficulty in 99 out of 100 cases. Whether my feeling was correct or not would be something to find out in the future. Anyway, since we couldn't just keep staring at each other, I took the initiative to ask, "Are the seats empty?" "Yes." Her hoodie worn over her school uniform seemed slightly oversized, as only the tips of her fingers peeked out from the loose sleeves. She tapped the seat next to her. "She wants me to sit there, I suppose." I didn't hesitate and quickly took the seat. Go Hyan Woo chose a spot across from me, near the window. "My name is Go Hyan Woo. I'm Kim Ho. Seo Yin." After our brief introductions, I found myself lost in thought. I had memorized all the characters in Dragon Slayer Academy from the named ones to the minor extras, in its story and quests. But Go Hyan Woo and Seo Yin were both new to me. Moreover, from my brief observation at the platform, other students and station staff were all unfamiliar faces. The setting was the same, but the characters were different. This would inevitably lead to changes in the upcoming events and quests. I needed to keep a close watch to see what would change and what would remain the same. Rumble. My body slightly jolted, and I felt a faint sense of floating. The train must have departed as the scenery outside the window gradually receded. But for a while now, I've been feeling a persistent gaze on me. Seo Yin was staring intently at my face and with slightly less sleepy eyes than when we first met. As I sent her a look asking if she had something to say, she placed her bag on her lap. It was a tactical metal bag that was designed for extreme practicality, devoid of any trace of cuteness. She rustled through the bag and pulled out a small paper pouch. From the pouch, she offered me a chocolate chip cookie. "Want one?" Seo Yin possessed a unique set of eyes that were different from others. Her eyes could quantify everything she saw into information. For example, when she looked at a male student in martial arts clothing, she saw familiar data. Status: Go Hyan Woo. Skills: Heavenly Flow Sword Technique D. Traits: Swordsmanship Sikori, etc. She could delve into these details anytime she wanted, though they rarely piqued her interest. However, the data for another male student who entered the cabin was full of question marks. Not metaphorically, but literally filled with question marks. Stat: MPL arc. She couldn't read anything at all. This was the 4th time Seo Yin had encountered such a status window since she had acquired her eyes. It was the 4th among countless status windows she had seen flit past her. She couldn't help but be intrigued. Moreover, The previous 3 had all been individuals of deep importance to her. So, would this man who introduced himself as Kim Ho be the same? There were many reasons why her gaze kept returning to him. Even though staring wouldn't change the question marks filling his status window, she continued to look intently. As she did so, Kim Ho met her gaze and his eyes were filled with curiosity. Seo Yin didn't look away but continued to stare, and while doing so, she suddenly remembered a piece of advice she had heard before. If you're interested in someone, start by showing them kindness. Seo Yin took out a cookie from her bag. Want one? Ah, thanks. I somewhat bewilderedly accepted the cookie. It was about half the size of my palm, irregularly shaped, far from a perfect circle, and the chocolate chips were unevenly embedded in it. Although it wasn't very appealing to look at, I doubted it would taste much different from a typical chocolate chip cookie. With that thought, I took a big bite. Seo Yin was looking at me intently again as if asking how it tasted. I took a moment to choose my words carefully. The cookie is quite soft. It was a lump of softness with hardly any sweetness. I had some expectations about the chocolate chip cookie, but it seemed to be 65% pure cacao, and it tasted more bitter than sweet. Of course, it was different from what I had expected, but not tasteless. So, I managed to finish the cookie quite easily, and throughout, Seo Yin kept watching me. Her face was expressionless, so it was hard to read her thoughts. Still, it felt uncomfortable just making eye contact, so I searched for a topic of conversation. It's good. Did you bake it yourself? Have another. At this time, Go Hyanwoo coughed lightly and asked, albeit hesitantly, if it's not too rude, may I have one too? This is the last one. Seo Yin cut him off with an almost cold, decisive tone. At the same time, she fed the last cookie from the paper bag into my mouth, and it was indeed the last one. I couldn't shake the feeling that she just didn't want to give one to him. Go Hyanwoo opened his mouth to say something, but then, as if realizing it was pointless, he closed it. Just then, drrrrr. Suddenly, the cabin door slid open, and a boy with a buzz cut burst in. He promptly plopped down in the empty seat next to Go Hyanwoo. Sorry everyone, I need to intrude for a moment. I'll just sit here for a bit if you don't mind. I don't mind at all. Feel free to stay as long as you need. Me neither, the seat's empty anyway. Instead of replying, Seo Yin simply nodded her head slightly. The boy with the buzz cut grinned. I like this welcoming vibe. I'm Byung-chil, Shin Byung-chil. This guy is ordinary. As soon as I laid my eyes on the Shin Byung-chil, a rough estimate immediately came to mind. If he took the easy route, he'd be a C grade. But with real effort, perhaps he'd end up a B grade. The potential scene in Go Hyanwoo and Seo Yin was so dazzling that this level hardly caught the eye. However, despite my harsh evaluation, it seemed beneficial to familiarize myself with Shin Byung-chil. From the moment he entered the cabin, I had a rough idea of his identity. A clue was that despite his flashy entrance, he barely made any sound. When Shin Byung-chil introduced himself, everyone responded with a light exchange of names. He showed particular interest in Go Hyanwoo. Seeing that you are wearing a martial artist's clothing, you must be from a sect, right? Which sect are you from? I'm from Heavenly Wind Gate. Heavenly Wind Gate, Heavenly Wind Gate, Wind Gate. I've never heard of it. It's an obscure, single succession sect that is not well known to the public. It's possible you haven't heard of it. Is that so? I'll make a note of it. Let's see. Shin Byung-chil then pulled out a small notebook and swiftly jotted something down. Next, he turned his attention to Seo Yin and me. Do you two belong to any sects or magic towers? No. Seo Yin, once again, responded silently by shaking her head from side to side. Shin Byung-chil continued to scribble something in his notebook. Information is crucial. It translates to money, you know. From the way you talk about it, it seems you trade information too. Of course, and I don't just deal in information. When I showed interest, he seemed to think I could be a potential customer. So he quickly took out a business card and handed it to me. The card's cheap design resembled those distributed in low-end pubs, with the following written in the center: Dragon Slayer Academy Errand Service. Seek out the Shin Byung-chil whenever and wherever. I'll procure anything for the right price. I examined the card with curiosity, flipped it over, and asked, anything you say, does that include breaking out some rules? Ah, certainly, just give the word. You're on the run for that right now, aren't you? Shin Byung-chil, who had been chattering excitedly, suddenly clamped his mouth shut. It was clear now that his reason for entering this cabin was not merely to socialize with us. Was it that obvious? Your eyes kept darting towards the door. Well, I tried to hide it. Seizing the moment, Shin Byung-chul peered outside the cabin once more. Suddenly, after seeing something, he hurried back to his seat, pretending as if he had always been part of this cabin's company. However, the room's door opened again. TN. When author says Dragon Slayer Academy with the brackets, he is talking about the game, not the academy. The cabin door opened again and a female student walked in. She was a beauty comparable to Seo Yin, but her cold and stern appearance made her seem unapproachable, as if it would be difficult to even strike up a conversation with her. Her light brown hair was neatly tied up, and she wore an armband that read Disciplinary Committee. Outside the door, a large man, a noble-looking young man, and a smiling female student took their positions beside her, and they were all wearing similar armbands. I've gotten involved with the Disciplinary Committee right from the start. The Disciplinary Committee. This student organization manages the law and order within and outside of Dragon Slayer Academy. Traditionally, first-year council members are admitted early. They get acquainted with the basic guidelines and are then immediately deployed onto the train. Just like now. This is because the train heading to Dragon Slayer Academy, attracting vigorous youths from all over, serves as an excellent stage for the new council member to gain experience, and it seemed that Shin Byung-chul was about to become a part of that experience, the reason for which would soon become apparent. The female student glared at Shin Byung-chul and extended her hand. Please give it back. That's something you shouldn't have. However, Shin Byung-chul didn't seem inclined to give up the item. He maintained a playful expression, while his eyes kept darting over the girl's shoulder, likely plotting a possible escape route. The female student asked him, "What's so funny?" "Nothing. Just thinking you're a bit too clingy, with such a pretty face but acting so strict. You won't be popular with the boys. Ugh." FZZT. A brief electric current struck Shin Byung-chul. It was the simple lightning magic spell, Zap. Lightning attribute mages are rare. Initially, my plan was to avoid getting involved and just observe. But this development changed the scenario. Since my copy skill slot was empty, perhaps this was an opportunity to intervene and acquire a new skill. In the brief moment when Shin Byung-chul was hit by the lightning, I finished my calculations, and first, I apologized to Seo Yin in my mind. Sorry. Shin Byung-chul seemed to have fallen into a mild state of paralysis, trembling as he nearly fell sideways, but managed to stay upright by leaning on the cabin's table. The full weight of his body bore down, so when he leaned on the table, the recoil hit my elbow. Hud. Now, the handmade cookie I was slowly enjoying slipped from my hand and rolled across the floor. When the train jerked slightly, the cookie rolled further away from me. It was too late now. Any food that falls on the ground and stays for more than 3 seconds is no longer edible. I've created a pretext. Now, all that was left was to find the right moment to step in. Shin Byung-chul struggled to his feet, shaking off the paralysis that had gripped his body. His hand subtly moved towards the back pocket of his pants. This is getting tricky. I'm not confident in a head-to-head fight. It seems you have no intention of surrendering willingly. I will have to subdue you. The female student slipped a dark blue glove onto one hand. It appears to be a fairly high-quality artifact, as it is embroidered with golden embroidery, and has topaz studded here and there. As she flicked her finger, the glove began to emit a strong light and electrical currents. The crackling electricity took the form of a small hummingbird and darted towards Shin Byung-chul. Hummingbird. Fight. However, the hummingbird failed to inflict any damage on Shin Byung-chul. It was intercepted mid-flight by my outstretched hand. A small explosion of electricity erupted from my palm and sparks were sent flying around the place. Feeling the impact firsthand, I was certain. It looks like a D rank, but it's E rank. I shook the tingling sensation from my hand. The female student slightly furrowed her brows at the unexpected interference. She stared at my face for a moment, as if trying to recall something, then slightly tilted her head. Are you in cahoots with him? I haven't seen you on the watch list. Not really. Just had some unexpected business to attend to. What business? My cookie. Excuse me. I pointed to the half-eaten homemade cookie still rolling back and forth on the floor. It fell because of you guys. That's something you can't buy even with money. You're interrupting the disciplinary committee's club actions over a mere cookie. It might just be a cookie, but to someone who was enjoying it, it's quite annoying. The female student looked at me as if I were an illogical guy. However, She seemed to find some reason in my words and hesitated before taking any immediate action. Meanwhile, the noble young man of the disciplinary committee entered the cabin. He looked ready to draw the golden sword at his hip at any moment. You're picking a pointless quarrel. Why don't you step aside while you're being asked nicely? If not, you'll taste something much hotter than a cookie. I advise you to think carefully and act wisely. Go Hyan-woo slowly stood up from his seat. If you intend to draw your sword, know that you won't be the only one taking action. The gaze of the young nobleman was fixated on Go Hyan-woo. Upon noticing he was dressed in martial arts clothing, the noble's eyes shifted to the sword sheath in his hand. Realizing it was a cheap iron sword, a sneer spread across his face. What if I draw it? What will you do? The nobleman, with a fierce smirk, and Go Hyan-woo, maintaining a calm demeanor, stared each other down, just as the problem that began with Shin Byung-chul's stolen item, moving through the cookie issue, was about to escalate into a fight between two warriors. Hold on a moment. The female student raised her hand to intervene. Then, with a somewhat skeptical look, she turned to me and asked, "How about I send you a dessert coupon from the student cafeteria? Would that settle this?" "Well, that works for me." "Then please stop causing trouble and step back." I pretended to think about it for a moment, then returned to my seat and sat down. Upon receiving my cue, Go Hyan-woo reluctantly stepped back as well. Compared to my bold approach, my easy withdrawal left some members of the disciplinary committee looking at me with suspicion. I've already got what I wanted. Activate the copy skill. Registering the target skill Hummingbirdie into the slot. Copy skill 1 above 1. 1. Hummingbirdie. The skill stored was Hummingbird, and the trait was Elemental Resistance. To acquire other skills or traits, I must either expand the slot or overwrite an existing one. Shin Byung-chul, who was looking for an opportunity, seemed to think that this was the moment and lunged forward. He twisted his body like a mollusk, trying to slip through the gap, but a lightning-formed hummingbird shot from the female student's fingertips. Crackling. Ugh! Shin Byung-chul fell in such an unsightly manner that made onlookers cringe. His forward momentum added to the impact, causing him to smack his head against the half-opened cabin door with a loud bang. Ouch, that must have hurt. Did a large bump form on his buzz-cut head by now? After the collision and the paralyzing effect of the hummingbird, Shin Byung-chul could only writhe on the floor. The female student then bent one knee to the ground and rummaged through Shin Byung-chul's possessions. Surprisingly, she pulled out a rich cluster of shiny, flowing hair. He stole the station attendant's wig. What a ridiculous prank. Ah dear. Oh wow. Go Hyan-woo and I looked down at Shin Byung-chul, who was crawling on the floor with pity. Now that I think about it, it made sense why the disciplinary committee was after him. Byung-chul was a bad guy. I mean, how could he commit such an inhumane act as stealing a bald man's wig? The 4 disciplinary committee members swiftly recovered the slightly scorched wig by the lightning spell and placed it in a zipper bag. Before leaving, the female student pointed at Shin Byung-chul, who was still in a daze. "I'll give you a heads up. Shin Byung-chul is under our disciplinary committee's close watch. Try to avoid getting involved with him. If you cause any trouble at school, we won't let it slide. That's for me to decide. Take care on your way. HMPH." With a disgruntled look, the female student glared sharply at me and then turned away. Just before leaving, the nobleman said something to Go Hyan-woo. "I will remember this." Likewise. And then he closed the door behind him. Ow, 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 my goodness, my aching body. After the disciplinary committee's members left, Shin Byung-chul groaned as he struggled to get up. Static electricity crackled with each movement, causing his body to jerk in response. Still, isn't that a cheap price to pay for stealing a bald man's wig? Go Hyan-woo, who was watching from the side, smiled bitterly. So, it's true that Dragon Slayer Academy has a powerful force called the Disciplinary Committee. Those must be them. Yeah, they only select the elite of the elite, so they're bound to be strong. Did you see the one who used the hummingbird on me? Know who she is? My knowledge is limited, I must admit. Could you enlighten me? A hint, it's the Song family. Immediately, Go Hyan-woo's eyes narrowed. The Song family? You mean the family that heads the Topaz Magic Tower? Exactly, that's the Song family, and she's none other than Song Chien-hai, the granddaughter of the Thunder Lord, Song Kyung-wook. Ah, I felt that she was no ordinary girl, but the granddaughter of the Thunder Lord. Today has indeed broadened my horizons. Go Hyan-woo murmured in admiration. The Thunder Lord was the pinnacle of many heroes who wielded lightning. This was a title bestowed only on the strongest, so much so that he was called beyond S-class among players. It goes without saying that he is one of the strongest characters in the entire world of Dragon Slayer Academy. The three who were standing right by her side are also not to be underestimated. The big guy is Joe Bayok, and the smiling girl is Hansomi. They're disciples of the Fist King and Sword Marquis, respectively. And what about the identity of that noble-looking guy, Jim Johan? He's the only son of the Golden Lotus Master. But as you've seen, he's quite the lucky bastard. He seems to have just enough skill to scrape into the disciplinary committee, but he pales in comparison to the other three. That's impressive. Is the disciplinary committee club filled with such people? At that question, Shin Byung-chul's expression became strange. He answered in a somewhat vague manner. Yes, that's true. But this year is a bit unusual. I heard that not just the disciplinary committee, but the overall level of new students has skyrocketed. Even our club seniors have been talking a lot about this year's new students. Shin Byung-chul seemed to have finally completely recovered from his paralysis, and warmed up his body by stretching his arms around like he was doing morning exercises. Anyway, it was nice meeting you guys. Remember to say hi if we see each other again. Take care. With that, he vanished out of the room like the wind. Quite a lively fellow, isn't he? Don't you think so, Kim Hyung? Indeed. I quietly turned my gaze to Seo Yeon, who had been silently watching us. Sorry, the cookie was really tasty. I'll make more. Really? MHM. I had inadvertently received a promise for cookies. Seo Yeon seemed to be slowly getting tired again, and after saying that, she slumped down on the table, and she became motionless, perhaps due to the whirlwind of events that had just swept through. The quiet atmosphere of the afternoon's parlor was quite pleasant. Go Hyan-woo and I were just looking out the window without saying anything. After a while, Go Hyan-woo broke the silence. By the way, Kim Hyung, may I ask you something? What is it? Did you really get involved just for the sake of the cookie? I agree that getting your snack time interrupted angers you, but it seemed like there might be more to the story. He's sharper than I thought. Despite his appearance of a well-mannered young man, his mind was quite astute. It was an unexpected side of Go Hyan-woo that I had seen. Feeling somewhat refreshed by this revelation, I began to explain. The primary reason was to meet the conditions of the copy skill. But even excluding that, there was another reason. It's rare to see a lightning attribute mage, so I just wanted to casually check out her abilities. FMM. But all Kim Hyung did was to counter Miss Song's move, right? All I had done was to interrupt in the middle, catch the hummingbird spell, and then leave. This was hardly enough to assess someone's capabilities. I asked him back, how much do you know about the hummingbird spell? I saw it for the first time just now. So, what did you think of it at first glance? HMM. Go Hyan-woo closed his eyes for a moment and was lost in thought. He seemed to be recalling the scenes he had witnessed. It's extremely fast, hard to follow with the eye, and the technique seems more focused on controlling the enemy, like causing paralysis or stiffness, rather than inflicting damage. You're half right. What's the other half? Watch closely. I created a hummingbird on my palm. It was the size of a fly, so it was different from Song Chien-hai's hummingbird. Since the mana power source, the core, has not yet been created, I couldn't properly manifest even low-level spells. Still, this size was enough to demonstrate its movements. The hummingbird took flight from my hand. Following my control, it formed a figure 8 in the air and moved irregularly in a zigzag pattern. It's called a hummingbird because it was made to imitate the flight of a hummingbird. Indeed, such movements would be quite tricky to counter. The performance varies greatly depending on the practitioner's skill level. Go Hyan-woo tilted his head, still not quite understanding. But what does that have to do with Miss Song's abilities? Think of it in reverse. If the hummingbird's movements change depending on the skill of the practitioner, then one could gauge skill level by the hummingbird's movements. Exactly. If Song Chien-hai had been a truly skilled mage, there should have been some change in the hummingbird's movement the moment I intervened. For instance, it could have flown around my hand, or it could have retreated briefly before flying again. However, Song Chien-hai's hummingbird had plunged straight into my palm. This was evidence of either poor control of magic or a lack of experience in actual combat. So much information was contained in Miss Song's single move. But that's not all. From what I had personally discerned, although it was E rank, it was so powerful that it could actually be considered a D rank. Either she had learned a powerful trait to assist her magic, or she was born with an enormous amount of magical power. Either way, it indicated high potential. The granddaughter of the Thunder Lord, she certainly lives up to her name. I added Song Qianhai's name to my list of heroes to be recruited someday. While I was pondering this, Go Hyanwu nodded his head and smiled pleasantly. It hasn't been long since I met Kim Hung, but I've learned so much, it must be fate. There's no need to call it fate. I can teach you at least this much. Kim Hyung is indeed generous. I think I chose well for my first friend. My judgment isn't too bad. It seems, haha. Go Hyanwu was someone who always interpreted things positively. Suddenly, Go Hyanwu's expression turned serious. If you ever need my help, just let me know. I'll do my best to help you. Really? Well, since it's come up, there's a saying, strike while the iron is hot. I stood up from my seat. Let's go somewhere together, just to pick up one hidden piece. Since the chase was over, the disciplinary committee members patrolled the train as usual. Was there a need to let him off? Song Qianhai glanced over her shoulder with a fleeting look. The one who broke the silence was Jiam Han, a fellow member of the disciplinary committee just like her. Ever since their first meeting, he had constantly engaged her in conversation, even over trivial matters. She was aware that his actions stemmed from kindness, but she had no intention of returning the favor. However, to maintain harmony in group settings, she couldn't completely ignore him either. In the end, Song Qianhai sighed inwardly and responded, "What are you talking about? That guy who butted in talking about cookies or something. If it were me, I would have shown him what's what just out of annoyance. But he seemed fine even after taking your hummingbird." Han Somi also nodded in agreement and added her 2 cents. "Right, you went easy on him at the end, didn't you? Your control over your spells has improved." Zhou Baiok was silent by his nature, so he didn't say anything, but his demeanor equally suggested agreement with the other two's words. Song Qianhai suddenly remembered something and stopped for a moment. Jiam Han asked her, "What's wrong?" "It's nothing." She pretended like nothing was wrong and resumed walking, but her mind was now twice as cluttered. Honestly, the man's interference had been completely unexpected. Because it was so sudden, it had momentarily disrupted her focus, and embarrassingly, her control over the hummingbird was a beat too slow. When she saw the lightning explode against the man's hand, her heart sank. Did I accidentally harm an innocent person? But somehow, that man had taken the full brunt of her hummingbird and remained unscathed. Not just unscathed, but he looked to be unaffected altogether. Even the expert in the magic tower would have shown a brief disruption in their movements if they were hit, but that guy just brushed it off. How is this possible? A vague sense of unease took on a more concrete shape in her mind. Song Qianhai mulled over the recent events. She found the situation increasingly bizarre the more she thought about it. Did I make some rookie mistake? Perhaps she hadn't channeled enough magical power, or her spell was sloppy. But her train of thought was abruptly cut short. A voice came through the small communicator in her ear. "There is a student conflict in cabin for C. Assistance is requested." "I'll be right there." Song Qianhai shifted her gaze to the other members of the disciplinary committee. It seemed they had also received the same message as they nodded in agreement. "Let's go." "That's right." Then she handed the zipper bag which contained the wig to the smiling Han Somi. "Somi, please take this to the station attendant. He should be around carriage 13. Also, check if there are any issues with the slot machines on your way back." "Okay, I'll be back soon." Han Somi waved cheerily as she departed. Song Qianhai walked along the train corridor and let out a small sigh. Let's just forget about it for now. There was a mountain of tasks to handle. The oddly annoying man was also a new student this year, so all questions could be resolved later. Originally, the train bound for Dragon Slayer Academy was designed as a luxury tourist train for the upper class. Due to the complex situations of the adults involved, the project was eventually scrapped. However, Dragon Slayer Academy recognized the sturdiness and quality of the train and decided to buy it. Now, after being remodeled to suit its intended purpose, it was running fine. Yet, remnants of the tourist train still lingered in various parts of the train, serving as a kind of hidden piece within Dragon Slayer Academy. My goal was precisely that hidden piece. Carriages 1 to 10 were designated for first-year students, with the following ones for second and third years. As the two of us passed carriages 8 and 9, nearing the end of carriage 10, Go Hyanwu, who had been following me, seemed to realize that my destination was beyond carriage 11. "Kim Hyung, do you have business in the second-year area?" "In the second-year area. There are second-year disciplinary committee members patrolling. It's impossible for us to get through with our current abilities. So, what then? Just watch, we're almost there. At the end of carriage 10, there was a large empty space. And there, hidden within an inconspicuous corner, was an old, small slot machine. This slot machine was a remnant of the tourist train, which was part of a small arcade and casino set up for guests. Although most of it was swept away during the remodeling process, for some reason, this slot machine couldn't be removed. It was a typical old-fashioned slot machine, with 3 screens that spun when a coin was inserted and the lever was pulled. The machine was unlit, and someone had even stuck a note over the coin slot that read "out of order." It seemed risky to insert a coin, as it might just swallow it without returning anything. Go Hyan-woo looked puzzled. Are we in the right place? It says it's out of order. We're in the right place. I started by peeling off the out of order label. In reality, it worked perfectly fine. Inventory. 5 silver coins. Next, I pulled out a silver coin from my inventory. Without giving Go Hyan-woo a chance to stop me, I quickly inserted it into the slot machine. But the machine remained dark and unresponsive. For a while, the two of us just stared at the screen without saying anything. Go Hyan-woo, unable to hold back any longer, opened his mouth to say something. Seems like it's really broken. Ding dong ding. Suddenly, a sound like that of an arcade game rang out, and all the lights on the slot machine started flashing wildly. Ooh. While Go Hyan-woo let out a sound of amazement. To me, the scene was all too familiar, and even somewhat boring. This was the hidden event, the slot machine that seems broken. It was an event known and played by only a select few among countless players. The first time you board a train is at the beginning of the story, before the tutorial has even been completed. To the eyes of beginners, an old slot machine tucked away at the far end of carriage 10 would hardly catch their attention. And even if they did notice that there was a slot machine, the bold out of order sign would likely deter them from risking their precious silver coins, unless they knew everything about it, like I did. When I pulled the lever, the 3 screens started spinning chaotically. Whirring. Various symbols flashed by. Ice, spider, apple, diamond, flame, elephant, mana, and then, ice mana water. There was a clattering sound and an item emerged from the slot machine's prize outlet. It was a 500 milliliters bottle of water. Obviously, this one was a dud. I didn't expect much anyway. I inserted another coin nonchalantly and pulled the lever again. The 3 screens whirled once more. Go Hyan-woo, who had been watching with interest, asked, "So, Kim Hyung, why did you bring me here? Technically, what we're doing is against school rules." "I don't understand. It's just an old gambling machine. How does that breach the rules?" "It's not the use of the machine that's the issue. It's the items it gives out that are problematic." The slot machine's top rewards were dark ice crystal, cute deadly poison, and purgatory lava. These were all prohibited items that students were not allowed to possess. This means that from the moment you get one of those items, you have to avoid the attention of the disciplinary committee. "I see. Then you'll just have to look out for any trouble, won't you?" "Yeah, and if by chance we get caught, delaying them would be even better. We might end up dealing with those guys we saw earlier. There's a high chance of that. Does it seem difficult to you?" I asked this as if it were a passing remark, but inwardly, I was keenly observing Go Hyan-woo's reaction. In truth, it was a one-sidedly risky situation for him. There was no real benefit for him in this. While the risks included violating school rules and potentially clashing with the disciplinary committee members. However, Go Hyan-woo readily nodded his head. "I'll give it a try. It may be hard to guarantee victory, but I can certainly buy us some time." "That's unexpected. I thought you would at least ponder over it a bit." "Haha, once you step into something, it's the warrior's way to see it through to the end. Just like when I got involved in the dispute between Miss Song and Shin Hyung. There must be something more to this. You'll explain everything later, right?" "Yes, thank you." Though he spoke boldly, Go Hyan-woo seemed slightly tense as he subtly caressed his iron sword. I reassured him as I inserted the next coin. "But it's unlikely anything will happen. The disciplinary committee doesn't come here that often. Considering the timing, they should be heading towards carriage 1 right now. So no need to worry." Hello. What are you doing over there?" We both whipped our heads around simultaneously. From the direction of the number 11 carriage that was located in the second-year students area, a female student approached us. She wasn't a second-year student, but she was a face I had seen before. She had a cute smiling face and a disciplinary committee armband on her arm. It was Hansomi. I guess we do need to worry after all. She's a disciple of the Sword Marquis, right? So we've heard. It's said that if you speak of the tiger, it appears, and there she was. Inside the train, the disciplinary committee members usually formed teams of 4, which was the standard party size, but in very special cases they would operate individually. It seemed that this was one of those very special cases, which was just my luck. Still, I had no intention of giving up. Before the fight began, I spoke to Go Hyan Wu. Lend me just 1 silver coin. Will 1 silver coin do? 1 is enough. Having more would be pointless. I caught the silver coin Go Hyan Wu flicked into the air. I trust you. Leave it to me. Watching me insert the coin and pull the lever, Hansomi spoke in a tone like she was scolding a child. Hey guys, you shouldn't use that, you know? Students are not allowed to touch it. However, as Hansomi took a step forward, Go Hyan Wu also stepped up and blocked her path. I apologize in advance for any rudeness, but you cannot pass any further. Are you saying you'll continue to use it? That's the situation. Hansomi tilted her head slightly in confusion. She thought Go Hyan Wu didn't understand the situation and began to explain carefully. If you break the school rules, you could receive demerit points. And helping a student who violates the rules is also subject to demerit points. That doesn't concern me. Why aren't you concerned about getting demerit points at the start of the semester? It's a choice I made. Therefore, it's only right that I face the consequences. Hansomi let out a small sigh. It was then that she realized she was dealing with someone who couldn't be reasoned with. From my perspective, as his ally, it was reassuring. But I could see how it would be extremely frustrating for her. Just as Hansomi was about to say something more, Go Hyan Wu replied in what could be said as formal politeness. I've heard that Miss Han has been trained in swordsmanship by the Sword Marquis. Would you grant me the opportunity to witness your skill? His attitude was polite, but if twisted a bit his words meant something like this. If you're so great, try getting past me with the swordsmanship you learned from the Sword Marquis. Hansomi seemed to understand the underlying message, as she pursed her lips several times before asking, What's your name? I am Go Hyan Wu. I don't particularly like fighting, but my master said that when someone challenges you, you must neither ignore nor avoid them. That's a wise advice. My own master said something similar. Go Hyan Wu nodded in agreement. Hansomi was about to draw her sword but then hesitated. That's right, I shouldn't be using a sword right now. The uniforms at Dragon Slayer Academy are covered with multiple layers of D-rank defensive magic, providing greater protection than armor. However, Go Hyan Wu had just recently come down from the mountain, so he was still wearing a martial artist's clothing. In such attire, engaging in a sword fight against him could lead to serious injuries. In cases where a student must be subdued by force. While fumbling, she pulled out something else. It was a short rod made of steel, and when she pressed the attached button, click, the rod extended to 3 times its length. It was a 3-section baton used for riot control. I should use this. Though it was somewhat less lethal than a sword, it was more than enough to subdue an opponent, especially when wielded by a disciple of a Sword Marquis. Even an iron bar could exhibit some form of swordsmanship. Go Hyan Wu smiled at that sight, holding back a bit. Are we? Then I can't go all out either, can I? He then unfastened the steel sword from his waist and lifted it, sheath and all. I'll use this. I request a fair match. All right, let's go. Hansomi cutely stamped her foot. She seemed to lightly bounce in place, but in the blink of an eye, she had charged right up to Go Hyan Wu. The 3-section baton thrust straight for his throat. Go Hyan Wu slightly twisted his body to evade, but Hansomi, as if anticipating this, changed the trajectory of her thrust to a sweeping strike. Again, Go Hyan Wu lightly stepped back, moving out of the range of the 3-section baton. Hansomi quickly adjusted her stance and closed the gap with a stabbing attack, which was similar to her first move. However, this time, the tip of the 3-section baton was subtly trembling, almost imperceptibly. As she drew closer, the trembling increased, and the baton seemed to split into 3 as if by a cloning technique, striking at Go Hyan Wu from 3 different directions. It appeared to split into 3 due to the attack's incredible speed. Go Hyan Wu looked at it carefully, pushed the sheathed sword he was holding into the range of the attack and lightly shook it once. Ta Die Dan. Judging by the sounds heard, it seemed he successfully defended, but still, he stepped back half a step, seemingly at a disadvantage. Han So-mi did not miss that chance and continued to press Go Hyan-woo aggressively. Even as he retreated step by step, Go Hyan-woo flawlessly blocked each attack. Thud. While I was watching, the slot machine spat out another 500 milliliters water bottle. I placed the water bottle aside and started the slot machine once again. That's the third silver. I wasn't particularly interested in the items that were coming out. They were likely to be duds, and even if not, they were probably just a bunch of not-so-useful stuff. My focus was solely on the battle between the two. He's not falling behind in skill. Being nearly equal to a disciple of the Sword Marquis meant he had top-tier strength. Among first-year students, just like I anticipated during our first encounter, he was a remarkable talent. Clang, clang. Go Hyan-woo once again blocked the 3-section baton with his sword sheath. Even though her attack was parried, Han So-mi pressed in deeper, attempting to strike Go Hyan-woo's temple with the handle of the baton. In response, Go Hyan-woo lightly flicked her wrist with his opposite hand and swung his elbow in a counterattack. At such close range, where their faces almost touched, fists, hands, the 3-section baton, the sword sheath, knees, and elbows became entangled in a chaotic dance. This time, it was Han So-mi who was forced to retreat. At such extremely close range, the melee fight seemed to favor Go Hyan-woo, who appeared to be one step ahead. Lemon apple orange. Clunk. The fourth silver. The slot machine spat out another dud. At least it wasn't the 500 milliliters water bottle, so perhaps that was slightly better. Vitamin Drink E. A beverage rich in various vitamins. Highly effective for skin care. 2 tries left. Slot machines are one of the classic games in a casino. This perception leads players who encounter this hidden event to think it's all about luck. They prefer to save their silver for later rather than waste it on uncertain gambling. But there's one fact they don't know. This slot machine has a ceiling that guarantees the highest reward. The 6th, 30th, and 100th try. More than 30 tries are nearly impossible unless you have merchant-type skills. And my goal was the ceiling of the 6th try. The cunning aspect of this 6th try ceiling was that players are initially given only 5 silver coins when they start the game. Simply going all in would mean they couldn't reach the ceiling without realizing that they just needed 1 more silver. That's why I had borrowed 1 silver from Go Hyan-woo in advance. I pulled the lever of the slot machine for the 5th time, as I briefly watched the two fiercely clashing with a 3-section baton and a sword sheath. Mana 7. Clunk. Mana 2% D. Contains condensed mana. Slightly increases maximum mana when consumed. It's rare to get to matches. A drink that slightly increases mana. Not a jackpot, but it was an unexpected gain. I guess I was on the luckier side. Now, the much anticipated ceiling. Unlike the previous 5 tries, I was a bit nervous as I inserted the coin and pulled the lever. The screen spun rapidly, the images whirring by. Just don't land on cute deadly poison. There were 3 types of top rewards, but I couldn't immediately use cute deadly poison if I actually got it, meaning I'd have to hand it over to the disciplinary committee, which is the same as wasting my investment of 6 silver coins. In fact, there was a 1 above 3 chance of losing the 6 silver coins investment, so ideally, I wanted to avoid that outcome. However, considering the 2 above 3 chance of receiving the desired reward and the benefits that came with it, it was worth taking the risk. WHIRRRR. Soon, the speed of the 3 fast-moving screens gradually decreased, and the results were displayed one by one. Ice. That's it. Clunk. The item that dropped was a small glass bottle. Ice crystals the size of star candies were enclosed inside, but their pitch-black color gave off an ominous vibe. Dark ice crystal C. Intensely cold taste. Exercise extreme caution when consuming. Warning, you may die. You can't take that with you. Han So-mi's demeanor as she said that was quite different from before. Until now, she had interacted with us with a pleasant smile, and her sparring with Go Hyan-woo had felt somewhat friendly. But now, she was as serious as if she were facing a life or death situation. The reason for her reaction was that this dark ice crystal was considered a prohibited item. By possessing it, I was actively breaking the school rules. Hand it over. I'd rather not. Han So-mi approached me and extended her hand, but I shook my head. If I had intended to hand it over easily, I wouldn't have started this in the first place. And then, as if he was in agreement with me, Go Hyan-woo stepped forward to block her path. Realizing that words were futile, Han So-mi raised her 3-section baton to a ready position. It was a stance she had adopted numerous times while sparring with Go Hyan-woo. However, this time, the air around her seemed to freeze, turning bitterly cold. She was beginning to ramp up her momentum. As Han Somi shifted her feet, her figure blurred and disappeared from my sight. Go Hyanwu hurriedly lifted his sword sheath, and in a flash of light, swoosh, ugh, struck by a blow of a different caliber, Go Hyanwu's figure was pushed sideways. He managed to block the attack, but as a result, a small crack appeared on his sword sheath. Go Hyanwu regained his stance and intensified his energy, swoosh, and narrowly defended against another strike from Han Somi. His core is a bit weak, while mana continued to surge from Han Somi's 3-section baton. The mana emanating from Go Hyanwu's sword sheath seemed weak, as if it might extinguish at any moment. The grade of Go Hyanwu's core was inferior to Han Somi's, resulting in a lesser amount of mana available to him. Can you hold out any longer? Honestly, it seems difficult. Go Hyanwu appeared to be acutely aware of his own weakness. He also realized that his chances of winning were slim, but I won't let him give up just yet, because there was still more to see. Just try for one more minute. In times like these, compensating for a teammate's shortcomings is precisely the role of a support. Activate amplification. The target's core rank increased, E to C. Duration 0 hours 0 minutes and 58 seconds. Cooldown period 0 hours 59 minutes and 58 seconds. Soon, the mana flowing from the sword sheath intensified. Go Hyanwu, sensing the power boiling up from his lower abdomen, turned to me with surprised eyes. I responded with a slight nod of my head. Just try a little longer. One of the 3 skills I acquired as a special perk from the reincarnation quest was amplification. It had the effect of raising the rank of a designated skill for the duration it was active. For instance, my current F rank amplification could raise a skill's rank by 2 levels for 1 minute. An E rank would become a C rank, and a C rank would turn into an A rank. The skill was powerful enough to warrant its 1-hour cooldown time, despite being active for only a minute. Swoosh. Contrary to moments before when Go Hyanwu was relentlessly pushed back, each time their weapons clashed, he now stood his ground steadfastly, like a steel tower. The sword sheath he gripped was swathed in a swirling blue energy. This was only possible because the rank of his core had risen from E to C. Rather than just defend, he now launched into an aggressive offense. Han Somi looked to be momentarily flustered by the sudden surge in Go Hyanwu's momentum. However, she quickly regained her composure and dodged each of the incoming attacks before striking back. The exchange between the two became much faster and more intense, so much so that you couldn't even see their movements if you didn't concentrate. Impressive. Although one might expect Go Hyanwu to struggle with the sudden surge in mana, he adeptly managed it as if it had always been his own, like a fish that had found water. I wish I could see his swordsmanship a bit more too. Duration 0 hours 0 minutes and 16 seconds. That was probably asking for too much. No matter what I wanted to see, there were limits with just 1 minute, and it seemed likely that the outcome would be decided even before the duration ended. Crack. Damn. Go Hyanwu, in the midst of fighting, looked down abruptly. His sword sheath had developed web-like cracks. The very small crack that appeared while blocking Han Somi's blow continued to grow, and eventually became like this. Soon, the iron sword, along with the final cracking sound, broke into along with its sheath. If the material had been just a bit better, it might have withstood the attacks without cracking. This was the limit of a cheap iron sword. I've seen enough for now. It had been quite an insightful time. I uncapped the dark ice crystal and poured its contents into my mouth in one go. Wah! Han Somi was shocked at this scene. She closed the distance in a flash and grabbed my hand, but the dark blue crystals had already vanished into my stomach. Her face turned deathly pale. You ate that. If you eat it, what happens if you eat it? At first, it feels as refreshing as gulping down a glass of ice. But gradually, that coolness turns into a bone-chilling cold, a sensation of everything inside, starting with the inner organs, freezing. Freezing status ailment is applied. For beginners first starting Dragon Slayer Academy, this dark ice crystal is extremely deadly. Even a piece as small as a fingernail can turn someone into an ice statue in an instant. Of course, I'm an exception. One possessed the S-rank elemental resistance after all. Freezing status ailment is removed. Freezing status ailment is applied. Freezing status ailment is removed. The dark ice crystals continued to emit cold air, but it was immediately neutralized as if it were nothing. While the chilling effect that harms players faded away, the immense energy contained in the crystal remained undiminished. This energy accumulated steadily within my body. The difference between poison and elixir is just a thin line. If one could control the side effects of the poison, wouldn't it become an elixir? If the purgatory lava had appeared instead of the dark ice crystal, my body would have similarly tamed the flames and made them my own. From the start, my confidence in elemental resistance led me to seek out this hidden piece. Han Somi's face remained deathly pale. She must have had some idea about the true nature of this dark ice crystal. At the very least, she knew it was a dangerous item that students should neither possess nor consume. So she must have expected me to freeze or collapse. But as I just stood there, her complexion slowly returned to normal. She asked me while carefully examining my face, "Are you okay?" Cough. The moment Han Somi asked if I was okay, I clutched my throat with both hands and contorted my face in agony. Then I began to tremble violently, bending my body more and more. Kim Hyung. I'll go call the others right away. Just as Han Somi was about to kick off from her spot to leave, I returned to a relaxed expression and a normal posture as if nothing had happened. That was just an act. Ha ha ha, Kim Hyung, that's too much of a prank. Han Somi, who realized that she had been fooled, pointed her finger at me angrily, while Go Hyan-woo burst into laughter. I showed Han Somi the empty bottle, shaking it. "I don't know what you thought it was, but this isn't it, right? Didn't you see it wrong?" "Is that so?" Freezing status ailment is removed. Freezing status abnormality is applied. Even now at this very moment, a battle was still raging inside my body, but there was no need to divulge that fact to the others. Han Somi took the empty bottle from me and examined it closely. However, since every last crumb of its contents had already entered my stomach, her effort was in vain. "It can't be, it was definitely that item. I'm telling you, you saw it wrong." There seemed to be no clear evidence, so I maintained my stance to the end. Han Somi had a very suspicious expression, but there's only so much one can do with suspicion alone. She eventually had no choice but to pout her lips and to let us go. "Both of you return to your cabin. Don't ever use this again. Don't even come near it." "All right. Sorry for the trouble we caused. Here, drink this on your way." I casually offered her a vitamin drink that came from the slot machine. As per the description, it was good for skin care. Han Somi quickly snatched the vitamin drink from my hand. "I don't care. I'll tell Chien Hai about all of this. Let's go." "Miss Han, it was a good match. Until next time." Then, even as we left, Go Hyan-woo courteously showed his respect. As I was walking, I felt a stinging sensation in the back of my head and looked back to see Han Somi, still glaring at us. When our eyes met, she tried hard to muster a scary expression while narrowing her eyes, but it didn't quite work out. She just looked cute. Do you think Ms. Han was convinced? No way, it was blatant deception. If she was convinced, she'd be a fool. Then she will probably confront us again soon. Absolutely. Even if Han Somi lets it slide, the disciplinary committee won't stay quiet. Was it worth it, though? He meant whether the risk of friction with the disciplinary committee and the possibility of receiving demerit points at the start of the semester was worth it. Well, even if you call it friction, nobody got hurt. And it's not like this will turn them completely against us, compared to what we gained. It's a minor issue. A femem. There's some logic to that. Miss Han didn't seem too upset either. So, what was the real nature of that glass bottle? It's a long story, but to put it simply, it's like an elixir. Eating it builds up mana. I opened my palm to show him. A handful of mana swirled and then vanished above my hand. Go Hyan-woo nodded in agreement. Indeed, if the only cost of this elixir is minor friction, then it's a profitable deal. I feel satisfaction in having helped Kim Hyung. Normally, we wouldn't even cross paths with the disciplinary committee, let alone have a conflict. But this time, we were just unlucky. Still, thanks to you holding her down, we managed well. Haha, for me, it was like killing two birds with one stone. I got to help Kim Hyung and also got a glimpse of the swordsmanship of the Sword Marquis. Plus, thanks to Kim Hyung's help, I could fight evenly with Miss Han until the end. Thanks to the amplification that enhanced his core rank, he managed to exchange blows for nearly a minute with an opponent who would have defeated him quickly otherwise. There was a lot to be gained just by reliving that battle. Go Hyan-woo clenched and unclenched his fists, as if he had a lingering feeling of that overflowing power, and then asked me cautiously, if it's not too much to ask, could I witness Kim Hyung's technique again? Not now. It's a skill with limitations, so I can't use it that frequently. There was also a 1-hour cooldown in effect, and even if there wasn't, I had no intention of revealing my full capabilities so carelessly. Offering more serious support is something I'll consider after we've built up more trust. Go Hyanwu looked to be disappointed, but he nodded his head in understanding. It can't be helped then. I expected that since it was such a powerful technique, there would definitely be some limitations. It's not just for today. There will be other opportunities to use it in the future. Also, I handed over the mana to %D that had luckily dropped from the slot machine. This also came out. It's your share. As Go Hyanwu examined the item description, his eyes widened in surprise. Mana 2%D. Contains condensed mana. Slightly increases maximum mana when consumed. I'm not sure if I should accept such a valuable item. I've received a lot of help from you, and you lent me 1 silver coin earlier. It's only fair to give you this in return. Still, compared to 1 silver coin, this seems too generous. If Go Hyanwu hadn't lent his strength, the plan with the slot machine would have fallen apart as soon as we ran into Hansomi. Since I was able to drink the dark ice crystal, giving him such item was not at all regrettable. However, Go Hyanwu seemed hesitant to accept it. I playfully tapped his shoulder. Just take it. If it bothers you that much, buy me a meal sometime. That seems fair to my conscience. I think I saw a snack corner on the way here. How about I buy some snacks from there? Sounds good to me. With light steps, we headed towards the snack corner. When we returned, Seo Yin was still lying face down on the table, wandering in dreamland. As we started to open the snacks we picked up from the snack corner, she finally began to stir from her sleep. Her eyes were half open, but she was still half asleep. You're awake. Would you like some, Miss Seo? Eat it. Her slender, pale hand briefly fumbled among the snacks before picking up a stick-shaped one. Seo Yin brought it to her mouth and started nibbling at it, starting from the tip. As I watched her eat more and more, I realized that she preferred light over just sweet. It wasn't a mistake that her homemade cookies lacked sugar. It was purely her taste preference. Ooh, what are these sweets made of? They have a truly unique flavor. On the other hand, Go Hyanwu would put any snack in his mouth regardless of whether it was light, sweet, spicy, or salty. He popped them into his mouth without hesitation, savoring each one and exclaiming in delight, "Is it that good?" Since my sect is deep in the mountains, we rarely get a chance to try such things. Now and then, gifts from my master's close friends were all we got. Yeah, it can't be helped for a sect deep in the mountains. I pushed the snack bag toward him. Go Hyanwu, who was savoring a chicken leg-shaped snack, suddenly looked out the window and asked, "How much longer until we arrive?" "Almost there, I think." The reason I answered that way was because everything outside the window was blue. A lake so vast it reminded one of the sea. The train had been crossing the middle of this enormous lake for some time. Looking out the window, it almost seemed as though the train was running on water. But in reality, it was traveling on tracks laid shallowly on the water's surface. I pointed toward an island with only a vague outline visible in front of us. "We just need to get there, so it won't be long. Indeed, we should arrive in no more than a quarter of an hour." The huge lake and the island at its center, a strange island made up of countless dungeons, called Dungeon Island, was the final stop of this train. In the past, Dungeon Island was a lawless zone swarming with all sorts of criminals. From the perspective of someone fleeing, they just need to select and hide in a dungeon with a moderate level of danger. On the other hand, those in pursuit had to first figure out which dungeon the escaping fugitive was hiding in, and even if they were lucky to find it, a complicated chase awaited them inside the dungeon. Therefore, it was a place that was abandoned as a lawless area for a long time. Then one day, the first hero and dragon slayer set foot on this dungeon island. He swept away all the criminals without leaving any behind. He conquered the dungeons completely. He founded a city and established an academy. This was the Dragon Slayer Academy. The once blurry image of Dungeon Island gradually became clearer. As the land neared, the train slowed down, and by the time the blue view outside the window transformed into well-paved roads, the train finally came to a complete stop. Go Hyanwu had been reveling in his own snack festival among the bags of snacks until then. When it was time to leave, he gathered the bags together and crushed them into one bundle. Even though he still had quite a bit of snacks left, he tossed the combined mass lightly into a trash bin and declared, "We've arrived, let's get up." Seo Yin, who had been dozing off and on, stretched herself in her seat. Her clothes are all messed up, likely because she slept against the table or wall. I couldn't help myself and tugged at her clothes to straighten them out. Upon disembarking from the train, we were surrounded by a bustling crowd of students. A red-haired female student's wand sparked with a small flame. A palm-sized cat was perched on the shoulder of a timid-looking girl. It was swiping at the continuously passing students with tiny meow punches. Everyone's individuality was so pronounced that finding someone ordinary seemed like a more difficult task. The presence of so many distinctly unique students in one place only added to the sense of chaos. First years, this way. Don't come this way. Don't follow the upperclassmen. Hey, grab that one. Senior students wearing disciplinary committee armbands were waving their batons and shouting at the top of their lungs. Because the second and third year students and freshmen had different destinations, the seniors stopped the freshmen who were attempting to follow them and guided them in a specific direction. Having been to the island more than once, I could navigate Dungeon Island with my eyes closed. Following the disciplinary committee members' directions led to a large auditorium where the entrance ceremony would be held. The three of us were simply following the student ahead, focusing only on the back of their head. However, along the way someone blocked our path. Song Qianhai crossed her arms and glared at me with an expression that screamed, "I've caught you red-handed." Sparks of faint electricity crackled from the glove she wore on one of her hands, as if she was putting on a show of force. 99 out of 100. She must have come to confront me because of the incident that happened at the slot machine earlier. Though there was no concrete evidence on her side, it seemed neat from my perspective to tie up loose ends here and now. "Please, follow me for a moment. Do I have to accompany you as well?" When Go Hyanwu asked, Song Qianhai shifted her gaze to him. "I heard you sparred with Somi." Upon hearing that she was the disciple of the Sword Marquis, I couldn't help but feel a sense of rivalry. "Next time, I would appreciate it if you could discern the time and place more appropriately. If a similar incident occurs again, I won't let it slide so easily. I'll bear that in mind." It seems this time she chose not to make an issue out of the fact that he helped me. "That's good." I waved lightly at Go Hyanwu and Seo Yin. "Don't worry, go ahead without me. I understand, we'll save you a seat, Miss Seo." Seo Yin, with her sleepy eyes that made it hard to guess her thoughts, alternated her gaze between me and Song Qianhai. When Go Hyanwu urged her, she nodded her head slightly and then headed towards the auditorium with him. As I watched the two of them walk away, Song Qianhai also started to move. "This way. Let's go." While she was taking me to some place, not a word was exchanged between Song Qianhai and me. Song Qianhai, who was leading the way, occasionally glanced back to ensure I was following. Judging from the displeasure that came out every time we made eye contact, it didn't seem like I made a good impression at all. In her view, I must have seemed like a strange person who caused trouble for the disciplinary committee over a cookie. Moreover, due to that slight friction with Hansomi, I was probably on the verge of being branded as a troublemaker. I was probably just a notch above Shin Byongchil, who was already a student known for being problematic. Eventually, we arrived at the office marked Disciplinary Committee Club. The office was neatly organized, except for a corner stacked with piles of documents. On one side of the room, there was a door leading to another room. Song Qianhai approached it first, opened the door, and gestured for me to enter. If the disciplinary committee office was neat and orderly, this room felt barren and stark. The only furniture was a table in the middle with two folding chairs facing each other. A single dim incandescent bulb faintly illuminated the dark room. Anyone could see that this was an interrogation room. The place was known among players as the Room of Truth. It was said that anyone who entered would come out a good person. "Please, take a seat." "Okay." At Song Qianhai's words, I pulled up a folding chair and sat down. I settled into the folding chair, leaning back with leisurely ease. This apparently looked too comfortable to Song Qianhai, as her eyes twitched once in response. She closed her eyes tightly as if suppressing anger, then reopened them. "Just wait a moment." Song Qianhai left the Room of Truth and soon returned with another male student. Judging from the golden color of the pin on his tie, he must be a third-year senior. His sturdy build and benign appearance reminded me of a gentle bear, perhaps more so because of his narrow, slit-like eyes. It was hard to tell if he was smiling or expressionless, as only the corners of his mouth were slightly turned up. The senior with narrowed eyes placed a few items on the table and asked, "Hello, your name is Kim Ho, right?" "Yes, senior." "All right, Kim Ho, my name is Oh Se-hoon. Most people know me as the president of the disciplinary committee or Slit-Eye Senior. Feel free to call me whatever you're comfortable with. People with narrow eyes usually don't like being called that, do they?" I wasn't sure if Osei-hoon was genuinely indifferent to such a nickname, or if he was testing me. In situations like this, it's best to keep quiet. Osei-hoon asked while pouring coffee from a thermos in his hand. Would you like something to drink? I've got honey water, green tea, and coffee. But it's almost evening, and coffee might keep you awake, right? I'll just have some cold water, thank you. Please stay seated, I'll get it for you. Before Osei-hoon could rise, Song Chien-hai quickly left the room and returned almost right away. She was so fast that one might have thought there was a water dispenser right outside the door. Song Chien-hai, still showing her displeasure, briskly placed a paper cup in front of me and then positioned herself upright behind Osei-hoon. Osei-hoon took a sip of his coffee and then began to speak. So, Kim-ho, we won't keep you long since you can't be late for the entrance ceremony. Just answer a few questions and you can go. Okay. I heard you used the slot machine in carriage number 10. So-mi warned you it was against school rules. But you continued. Why is that? He went straight into questioning about the incident on the train. My response did not change despite knowing the other party was the head of the disciplinary committee. I persisted with my strategy of feigning ignorance. I don't understand why it was against the rules. So being told not to do it just made me more rebellious. As she answered nonchalantly, Song Chien-hai's eyes twitched again. If it weren't for the disciplinary committee president, she might have cast a powerful spell on me right then and there. On the other hand, Osei-hoon slowly nodded his head as if he could see my point. There's some fault on So-mi's part for not explaining properly. Still, I hope you'll follow the disciplinary committee's instructions without question in the future. We're not always in a position to provide an explanation. I understand. There's another thing I want to ask. Song Chien-hai handed over a small glass bottle that was kept in a Ziploc bag. It was the same bottle that contained the dark ice crystal. Osei-hoon, examining the bottle, narrowed his eyes, which seemed to flash sharply for a moment. You swallowed the crystals that were in here. Don't you have any abnormalities in your body? None at all. I feel just the same as usual. Still, just to be sure, I'd like to conduct a simple test. Could you put your hand here? A device resembling a blood pressure monitor was placed in front of me. It was a device that displayed results when you inserted your hand into a fist-sized hole. A debuff detection device. In Dragon Slayer Academy, the methods to access information about an opponent's skills, traits, or equipment were extremely limited. It was even impossible to check what status ailments the opponent had, unless the status ailments were directly inflicted by oneself. This debuff detector was designed solely to check for status ailments in the person whose hand was inserted. Without hesitation, I put my hand into the hole. Why-er, the device started to whir and buzz. Until just before we arrived, the dark ice crystals were not completely absorbed, so the freeze effect continued to occur and release. But now that was all over. Therefore, it was unlikely that the detector would find any debuffs. As the device emitted a green signal, Osei-hoon nodded his head. It seems there's nothing unusual. Kim-ho, let me tell you something. In principle, you can be subject to disciplinary action simply by disobeying the instructions of the disciplinary committee, regardless of whether an explanation was given or not, of course. This is only a case of in principle. Since no one was hurt in this incident, and it's your first offense, we'll overlook it this time without issuing any demerit points. But I do hope that this is the first and last time we have to address an issue like this with you. Yes, senior. Hearing my answer, Osei-hoon's lips curved into a more relaxed smile. You can go now. Do you know the way to the auditorium? If not, you can go with Chien-hai. It's fine, I know the way. All right, then go ahead and have a good semester. Osei-hoon was leisurely savoring his coffee even after Kim-ho left. He was someone who could enjoy a relaxed moment anywhere as long as he had his coffee with him. He gently took another sip and then asked a question over his shoulder. It looks like Chien-hai is dissatisfied. That man is lying. At least he's definitely hiding something. Why do you think so? Student Kim-ho's room was in carriage number 8. There's no reason for him to go all the way to carriage number 10, unless his target was the slot machine from the start. And as for dumping the contents of the bottle in front of So-mi, he said it was out of rebellion. But it seems forced to me. You've got a sharp eye. My thoughts are similar. Although he expressed his agreement to Song Chien-hai, it seemed like Osei-hoon had lost interest in the matter. Was it her imagination? Or did he seem more interested in the coffee in his hand? Song decided to press further. There's a high possibility he acquired some prohibited skill. If we use the magnifying glass to check his skills, we might catch him. Yeah, that could be the case. The magnifying glass was an item that allowed partial access to a subject's information. The information that could be viewed varies depending on the type and rank, but if you use the right one, you should be able to see what skills someone possesses. However, Oh Se-hoon's response remained lukewarm. Just as Song Chien-hai was about to add another comment, he asked a question. What if it shows nothing? Pardon. If we use the magnifying glass and it doesn't reveal any problematic skills, what then? That is, Song Chien-hai found herself unable to respond easily, although she was almost 100% certain in her suspicion. What if she pushed hard and it turned up nothing? The backlash would affect not just the disciplinary committee, but also the Topaz Magic Tower that she was a part of. On the other hand, even if the magnifying glass did reveal a prohibited skill, the chances of it being something egregiously evil were slim. At most, the perpetrator might get demerit points or a minor disciplinary action. The risk seemed too great compared to what could be gained. Oh Se-hoon had likely already considered this when he decided to let Kim Ho go. Song Chien-hai bowed her head. I'm sorry, I was careless. Oh Se-hoon was pleased with his junior's attitude. This was a time when the students were full of self-esteem as elites. Recognizing and admitting one's mistakes during such a period was no easy feat. Oh Se-hoon gently advised her. Chien-hai, I understand that your heart is in the right place. But remember, in matters like these, pushing aggressively isn't always the solution. Let's take it slow and look at the bigger picture. Yes, if Kim Ho was indeed using something prohibited, he would inevitably get caught, even without the use of the magnifying glass. Unless he causes more trouble, let Kim Ho be. Our priority now is to monitor the trends among the clubs. Understood. Come on, you better hurry too. You'll be late for the entrance ceremony if you don't leave now. The time I spent in the Room of Truth was very brief, but by the time I stepped outside, the sun was already halfway down, walking on the land bathed in the crimson hue of the setting sun. I arrived at the auditorium. Hundreds of freshmen were seated, waiting for the entrance ceremony. The noise of their chatter combined, sounding like a swarm of bees buzzing. While casually looking around, I noticed someone with gray hair. Although it was a game world where all kinds of worldviews were mixed, gray hair was still surprisingly rare. Seo Yin seemed to sense my gaze and turned her head towards me just in time. Following her gaze, Go Hyan-woo also looked my way and soon he spotted me and waved his hand. Kim Hyung, over here. In a rather calculated move, Go Hyan-woo and Seo Yin had strategically left a seat empty between them. Unless you have a very thick face, it would have been difficult to put your butt in between them. The moment I sat down in the empty seat, a notification message was displayed in the corner of my eye. Tutorial 3 completed. You have attended the entrance ceremony on time. Reward, E-rank weapon selection, 5 silver coins. Weapon selection E. You can acquire any E-rank weapon of your choice. Even though it was called an E-rank weapon, it was merely mass-produced equipment that was no better than Go Hyan-woo's iron sword. But it was still better than nothing. The 5 silver coins I had squandered on the slot machine were also fully reimbursed. The bustling auditorium began to quiet down, beginning from the front rows. The reason was that a group had entered the stage at the front of the auditorium. Judging by the timing of their appearance and their age range, it was clear they were the teachers and staff of the Dragon Slayer Academy. As the students' attention converged on them, the teachers displayed varying reactions. Some completely ignored the sea of faces, focusing straight ahead as if nothing else existed, while others responded with faint smiles and friendly waves. Among them, a man who appeared to be in his late 30s, with a roughly trimmed beard, stepped up onto the podium. Looking at the middle-aged man reminded me of the typical fool in the neighborhood, the fool who was always shabbily dressed in a tracksuit and dragging his worn-out slippers everywhere. It seemed I wasn't the only one who thought so. As to female students who were sitting in front of me were whispering such things to each other. However, their whispers were so loud that they could be heard by those around them. That's the principal, right? He doesn't look very impressive. No, you're mistaken. Even if he looks like that, he was the leader of the Dragon Slayer team when he was young. I heard he even killed 2 adult fire dragons. Wow, really? Traditionally, the principal of the Dragon Slayer Academy is a position held by a hero who retired from the front lines. And the title of hero, much like that of Thunder Lord, is bestowed only upon one among the many powerful S-rank individuals. Despite his unimpressive appearance, He harbors an unimaginable amount of power within him. Since the heroes I raised before had about 20 S-rank skills, I'm guessing he's about the same, but he's still single. Really? I heard he's been rejected by the Saints for times. No, it's actually 5 now. He proposed again recently and got turned down again. Oh my. The principal. What kind of battles had this man faced? The perception of the principal in my mind suddenly became that of pity. He looked around the crowd with weary eyes and opened his mouth. Welcome, new students. I sincerely welcome you to the Dragon Slayer Academy. The auditorium suddenly became so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. The principal's expression, which started with a gentle greeting, turned serious. Long ago, the Dragon Slayer Academy, as its name suggests, was established to prepare for the war against dragons and to nurture dragon slayers. The reason the first hero insisted on including the character for Slayer among many good words was probably to encourage you all to deeply consider what it means to be a Slayer. What is a Slayer? You can't become an ogre Slayer without slaying an ogre, nor a dragon Slayer without slaying a dragon. As such, taking life is both our fate and essence as Slayers. Do not turn away from this truth. At the same time, you must think it through. Why do I want to become a Slayer? For what purpose do I wish to take life? I hope that by the time you graduate, you will have found your own answers. The reason the principal began by mentioning these uncomfortable truths was that, beyond physical training, tempering one's inner self is of great importance. And this inner tempering starts with setting a clear goal in mind. The A-rank and S-rank monsters the students would have to face after graduation are akin to living natural disasters. With vague aspiration like wanting to live well or become rich, one would simply crumble like a candle in the wind when confronted with such monsters. Besides me, there were quite a few students who nodded their heads in understanding or were lost deep in thought at the principal's words. It would have actually been an excellent opening speech if he had stopped there. Just one more thing. Unfortunately, the principal was someone who didn't know how to stop at the first verse. His sermon went on and on. The students twisted in agony, but the principal was oblivious to their discomfort and continued at a lullaby's slow pace, insisting on saying what he wanted. This time for real, just one last thing. Had someone not intervened, his talk might have continued for hours more. A woman in a suit who was waiting near the podium made a gesture as if pointing to her wristwatch. Only then did the principal seem to decide to wrap things up. I hope you all become true heroes at Dragon Slayer Academy. That's all. Ugh, Mom, my head hurts. All of the new students were in a state of deep despair. Some were clutching their faces and others complaining of headaches. Amidst this, Go Hyanwoo kept nodding his head with a smile, as if he was deeply moved by the principal's words. Truly a meaningful time. Weren't you bored? Bored, Kim Hyung. How can you say that? Each word was a valuable lesson, like flesh and blood. My master used to give me such advice every day. You heard this kind of thing every day. So he was already well trained for this, huh? I gave up on the conversation. In life, there are some battles that you simply cannot win, and this was precisely one of those moments. Meanwhile, Seo Yeon had her arms crossed and her head was bowed ever so slightly. I waved my hand lightly in front of her face, but she showed no reaction. She was dozing off with her eyes half open. I didn't know if I should wake her up, so I just let her be. After the principal stepped down from the podium, a woman in a suit took his place. She was a person who seemed flawless both from the outside and the inside. Perhaps if Song Chien-hai aged about 10 years, she might just look like this woman. I overheard the girls in the front row whispering, "It's the vice principal." Had I not known and seen the principal and vice principal standing side by side, I would have probably been confused about who was actually the principal. When the vice principal swept her cold gaze over the audience, the chatting students flinched and immediately shut their mouths. It was only a matter of moments before the slowly growing noise died down. The following is an announcement. This year's list of prohibited items has been updated. These items are subject to confiscation simply if the student carries them or keeps them in his or her inventory, and depending on the severity, a punishment of more than demerit points will be imposed. Please be fully aware of them and abide by them to avoid being penalized. In addition, new students will only conduct practical evaluations on the ground level of the dungeon. Until further notice, unauthorized entry into the lower levels can cause problems not only for the individual, but also for their affiliated sects, towers, and clubs. A moment of curiosity should not lead to misery for everyone. The vice principal delivered this message with a warning look. The new students shivered as if they felt a chill even though they had done nothing wrong. The entrance ceremony will now conclude so that you can have dinner. Please return to your dormitories on time. After the vice principal finished saying that, she immediately came down from the podium. Compared to the principal's lengthy speech, it was a brief, to the point, and practical announcement. It happened so quickly that there were many students sitting in their seats, thinking that the entrance ceremony had not yet ended. However, once all the faculty and staff members began to leave, they slowly started to get up as well. Go Hyan-woo stretched lightly in his place. It's time for dinner. I was just starting to feel hungry. Let's hurry. If we arrive a bit later, we'll have to line up. The two of us were about to hurry away when we suddenly remembered something we had forgotten, and turned around at the same time. There sat Seo Yeon, still slouched in her chair, half asleep with her eyes half open. Her presence was so faint that we almost left without her. Hey, Seo Yeon. I knew I had to wake her, but she didn't respond to my call. I moved closer and then I gently tapped her shoulder with my fingertip. Only then did Seo Yeon slowly lift her eyelids and stand up. Having just woken up, she appeared disoriented and she started scanning her surroundings lazily as if struggling to grasp the situation. Then she noticed me and stared intently at my hand, the culprit that woke her up. The entrance ceremony is over. Let's go eat. Seafood pasta was served for dinner. When you cook meals for hundreds of people at the same time, the food quality naturally drops. But this pasta was actually on par with that of a famous restaurant. This went to show how skilled the kitchen staff were. This also proved that the Dragon Slayer Academy paid attention to even the smallest details, like the quality of meals. Given that it's an institution dedicated to nurturing future heroes who will protect humanity, it makes sense that they would offer such exceptional treatment. After all, not just anyone could enroll here. Hey, friends, enjoying your meal? Oh, you're here. Just like when we first met on the train. Shin Byung-chul came over and casually took the seat next to us. Whatever he had been up to, there were 3 red scratch marks diagonally across his cheek. Go Hyan-woo couldn't hold back his curiosity and asked, Shin Hyung, what happened to your face? Oh, just a minor incident. A timid-looking female student passed by, and she cast an uneasy glance at Shin Byung-chul. The cat perched on her shoulder hissed and arched its back with its claws extended. I decided to pretend I hadn't seen anything. The shrimp is delicious, Shin Byung-chul commented as he devoured his portion of the pasta. Eat well and rest up. Tomorrow is a big day waiting for us. Big day, what does that mean? You don't know. Tomorrow is the first day of classes. True. But what happens on the first day of classes? Shin Byung-chul opened his mouth to explain, but seemed to change his mind midway, and smiled mischievously. I'm not telling. Let's leave it as a surprise for tomorrow. Kim Hyung, do you know anything? It's nothing big, just wait until tomorrow. I'm still curious though, Miss Seo. I don't know. Seo Yeon didn't even spare Go Hyan-woo a glance. Feeling left out, Go Hyan-woo sighed softly. The principles of the martial world have fallen indeed. After dinner, we continued chatting about trivial matters. Of course, out of consideration for Go Hyan-woo, we never mentioned what the next day was about. As time passed, the members of the disciplinary committee announced that it was getting late. Let's start wrapping things up. Everyone, head to your dorms. If you don't know the way, don't wander around, just come and ask. Now that darkness had set in, our final destination was the dormitory. When I took out my student ID, I noticed the number 3406 engraved on the back. This meant that it was in Building 3, room 406. When I found Building 3 and put my student ID card on the device that glowed softly with magic, the front door opened. But Go Hyan-woo kept following me. We went through the same gate, climbed the same stairs, passed through the same hallway. Even when I stopped in front of room 406, he was still with me, so I asked him, Hey, which room are you in? I'm in 407. What about you, Kim Hyung? 406. Oh, it was like that. It seemed like some twist of fate had made us neighbors overnight. What a pleasant coincidence to be next-door neighbors. I'm not so happy about it. Then rest well, Kim Hyung. I waved my hand nonchalantly at his polite greeting and entered my room. The room was unexpectedly stylish and spacious for a dormitory, and was fully equipped with the necessary facilities. It was so good that it could have been mistaken for a hotel room. The elements I had casually encountered in the game have now become my reality. I sat down on the bed, feeling a strange mix of emotions. The bed was also of a very high quality, and it was so comfortable that I felt like I would fall asleep right away the moment I laid down on it. But I wouldn't sleep tonight. There was something I needed to do. Create the core. Kim Ho. Skills Amplification F copy skill 1 above 1 Hummingbird E. Traits Monarch F copy trait 1 above 1 Elemental Resistance S. Equipment School Uniform D. Inventory E rank weapon selection E5 silver coins. I copied the Hummingbird skill from Songjian High, but I couldn't use it right away. To use skills that require magic power or inner power, one must have a power source to provide it, and the primary power source for this is the core. Usually, it takes weeks of dedicated effort to create one, but I have walked the shortcut hundreds of times before. One night should be enough. I had already accumulated an abundance of mana within my body, thanks to the dark ice crystal I absorbed on the train. Now, all I needed to do was compress it into a complete core. I began to clear my mind and focus my thoughts. This was necessary to control the huge energy accumulated inside me. There was another person who couldn't sleep at this hour. Go Hyanwu was sitting upright while focusing intently. Instead of the soft bed, he chose the hard floor. As he closed his eyes, memories of what had transpired on the train flashed through his mind. Scenes hurried by like a fast-forwarded film and then slowed to a crawl. When he encountered Han Somi, a 3-section baton flew towards him with fierce momentum, as if intent on breaking his bone. And he was there, exerting utmost effort to block each strike meticulously. The intertwining trajectories of the baton and sheath were beautiful. Han Somi was the first strong opponent he met after descending the mountain, a disciple of the Sword Marquis, one of the strongest men in the entire world. Though they both held back their true abilities in their duel, even if they clashed with all their might, it would have been difficult to achieve victory. No, the odds of him losing were high. As their battle intensified, his shortcomings were glaringly apparent. If Kim Ho hadn't intervened at the right moment, he would have fallen before his iron sword shattered. An expert. This was the word that had continuously come to mind since Go Hyanwu first met Kim Ho. Kim Ho possessed the poise that only a strong person possesses, as well as eyes that seemed to see through everything. Then, Go Hyanwu's gaze, momentarily drifting from his thoughts, settled on a long object in the corner of the room, the sacred artifact of his sect, wrapped in thick cloth and tightly bound with iron chains. Go Hyanwu had inherited the sect's sacred artifact with a clear goal in mind. Kim Ho would be a great help in achieving his goal. However, he smiled bitterly and shook his head. I cannot. He wasn't ready to ask for help yet. After all, Kim Ho was his first friend. He decided to try as much as he could on his own. Go Hyanwu closed his eyes again and began to relive his battle with Han Somi. A gentle breeze stirred around him, accompanied by a faint wave of energy. Core trait acquired. Core rank increases, F to E. Indeed, the elixir was effective. Even after getting Core F, I still had plenty of mana, so I decided to upgrade it to E rank. And there was still quite a bit of surplus mana. Picking up just a couple more of those elixirs could quickly elevate my core to D rank. FZZT. A hummingbird made of electric currents was created. In the train, it was barely the size of a fly and its movements were weak. But now it had the full form and agile movements of a hummingbird. The hummingbird circled the room once before being absorbed back into my hand. I looked out of the window suddenly and realized it was already morning. I glanced at the clock and saw that the alarm was about to go off soon. It was too hard to try and sleep for just a short while, so I decided it was better to stay awake and pass the time. Come to think of it, I earned the right to choose a weapon after completing the tutorial. Seizing the moment, I decided to use it. Weapon Selection E. You can acquire an E rank weapon of your choice. Refined Longsword E. Sharp Spear E. Flexible Longbow E. I didn't hesitate. I had already decided which weapon to choose, so I quickly scrolled through the list. You have acquired the Earth Staff E. Earth Staff E. Contains a faint aura of earth. Enhances earth magic and protective spells slightly. A long staff carved from wood with an emerald the size of a fingernail embedded at the end. And why did I choose the Earth Staff? It's all a foundation for the future. As soon as the alarm went off, I quickly silenced it and hurriedly got ready. Just as I was leaving my room, the next door room opened and Go Hyanwu stepped out. Unlike yesterday when he wore martial artist's attire, today he was neatly dressed in a school uniform. Of course, like yesterday, he had his sect's sacred weapon on his back and an iron sword at his waist. I noticed that he had replaced the one he had broken yesterday. Good morning. Yeah, Let's go have breakfast. After a simple breakfast, we headed to our assigned class. We entered the classroom after seeing the sign that said first grade, class 3. I thought we were quite early, but the classroom was already bustling with students who had arrived before us. The excitement of the first day of the semester must have brought them in early. I recognized quite a few familiar faces. Shin Byung-chul, smirking deviously, seemed to be plotting something with a few of his friends. Han So-mi, who kept telling silly jokes, and Song Chien-hai, who reluctantly indulged her despite being annoyed. Jo Byuk and Jim Jo-han appeared to be assigned to different classes. Go Hyan-woo looked around the classroom and asked, I don't see Miss Seo here. Isn't she in the same class as us? She is. I wonder if she's overslept. It's a bit worrying. Let her be. She'll show up eventually. Last night during dinner we all confirmed that we were in class 3. Amidst this, the absence of Seo Yeon from the classroom seemed to concern Ko Hyan-woo. He probably wondered if she was going to be late on the very first day. From my perspective, it was an unnecessary worry. Even if Seo Yeon was indeed lost in dreamland, there was nothing we could do about it. It wasn't like we could barge into the girls' dormitory. Rather, what I found odd was not Seo Yeon's absence, but the absence of someone else. Where has the homeroom teacher gone? On the first day of the first semester, especially for the first class, homeroom teachers are usually the ones who arrive early to prepare for the lesson. At least, that's what my memories from the real world and from Dragon Slayer Academy suggested. The excitement of the first day of the semester is a feeling shared not just by students, but by teachers as well. Yet there was no sign of our teacher. It seemed our class teacher was quite negligent in this regard. This was not particularly good news for the students. As class time approached, the remaining students arrived in a rush and filled the empty seats in the classroom. Seo Yeon finally appeared just before the bell rang. Good morning. She gave a yawning morning greeting, lazily waved her hand, and then naturally took the seat next to me. The melody flowing from the speaker signaled that it was time for class. But the teacher's desk remained conspicuously empty. The number of students looking around in confusion began to increase. Hey, where's the teacher? I don't know. But who is our homeroom teacher? How should I know? Clump, clump. Just then, heavy footsteps started to approach slowly from the far end of the hallway. A student wouldn't walk so leisurely after hearing the bell for class. Therefore, the chances were high that these footsteps belonged to our homeroom teacher. As if they were thinking the same thing, the entire class turned their attention to the hallway. As expected, the sound of footsteps stopped right at the classroom door. As the door slid open and the identity of the homeroom teacher was revealed, gasp! The whole class literally froze in place. The man's appearance was far from ordinary. One ear was shorter than the other, seemingly burned and adhering to his skin, and a scar that appeared to be a sword wound ran across the middle of his face. Combined with his sharp, predatory eyes, he exuded a fierce aura that could make even the most notorious criminals look tame. Most of the students were visibly shaken and they were trembling like mice in front of a cat, while some others, including Song Chien-hai, stared at him with tense, wary expressions. Only a few people, including Go Hyan-woo and me, showed no particular reaction. It was not because we were brave, but simply because we didn't know who he was. He might look scary at first glance, but without knowing his identity, there was no reason to be alarmed or scared. The man cracked a sardonic grin. Judging by your reactions, I must be somewhat famous. Nice to meet you all. I'll be your homeroom teacher for this year. He then proceeded to write his name on the blackboard. His handwriting looked to be as harsh as his appearance, resembling strokes made by a knife. Lee Soo-dok. For those of you who don't know, let me tell you just once. The highest rank monster I've slayed is an A-rank behemoth. Of course, if that was all, you wouldn't be cowering in front of me like this. Being an A rank is a basic qualification for teachers in this school. You there? Yes, yes. Lee Soo-dok pointed to a girl in the front row. Her face, which was already pale with fright, turned even more white. Tell me what people call me. SSS, Slayer Hunter. Besides that, it's 2 words. Ah, that is. I won't get angry. Just say it. If you don't speak up quickly, I will. The girl's eyes flitted around. Whatever those 2 words were, they seemed too uncomfortable to utter in his presence. However, as Lee Soo-dok's gaze intensified, she lowered her eyes and barely managed to squeeze out each letter, and her voice was shrinking with each syllable. Who, H, human, Boo B, Boo Butch, that is correct. As if he were satisfied with the answer, Lee Soo-dok wrote down the 2 words that the female student mentioned below his own name. Human butcher. So it has come to this. In the world of Dragon Slayer Academy, there were as many superhumans who exceeded the limits of human beings as there were grains of sand. Among the numerous superhumans there were villains who wielded their power for corrupt desires. It could be presumed that Lee Soo-dak was tasked with tracking and apprehending these evildoers. Additionally, the term human butcher implied that the number of humans he executed far exceeded the number he wrested. And if we were to judge based on their frightened faces, the count of villains he had eliminated should as well be over 100. It was understandable to feel intimidated in the presence of such a person. I'm not here by choice. If it weren't for a request from the principal, I wouldn't have even considered it. Regardless, this is a job and I am a professional. And one of my few prides is that I have perfectly completed every assignment that was given to me so far. I sincerely hope you don't mess that up. As Lee Soo-dak spoke, the atmosphere in the classroom grew even colder. I was probably not the only one who heard the underlying words of "I will personally kill any student who fails," before they even get a failing grade. There's no time to waste, so let's skip further introductions and get to the main point. I'll explain the grading system. With a snap of his fingers, the words on the blackboard vanished as if they had evaporated. He began to write anew on the now clean blackboard. Written exams 30%. Written exams account for 30% of the grade. This includes midterms, finals, reports, and assignments. Personally, I would have preferred to make it 20%, but that's not within my control. Lee Soo-dak clicked his tongue in disappointment, recalling that in his time, it was indeed 20%. Just like he said, the proportion of written exams changed every year. It fluctuated from 20% to 30%, and sometimes even dropped to 15%. What is certain is that in all the hundreds of times I attended Dragon Slayer Academy, I never saw the written exams exceed 30%. The Academy clearly prioritized other aspects over desk-bound academic performance. Next, Lee Soo-dak added a line beneath the 30% for written exams. Attitude score 10%. Just by not causing trouble and simply breathing, you can earn as much as 10% for some. It's like free points, however. He spoke leisurely. Then, as if he had just remembered, he added, "This attitude score is deducted a little each time you receive a demerit point for breaking a school rule, and if it goes below 0%, it can even reduce other grades. I wonder if anyone would take the rules lightly enough to let that happen. It might have been intentional." But for a moment Lee Soo-dak's gaze seemed to fix on Shin Byung-chul and his group. They quickly averted their eyes. "I'll keep an eye on the bad seeds. Who knows, we might meet again after graduation." The students trembled in fear. They probably imagined what it would mean to encounter the human butcher after graduation. In their minds, they were most likely desperately resolving never to break the school rules, even at the risk of death. But that's easier said than done. There's a reason why they start with giving out 10%. Next is the most crucial part, the practical exams. Strategy battle 30%. Duel battle 30%. Practical exams are divided into strategy battles, where you clear various dungeons, and duel battles, where you compete against other students, and it's all based on relative grading. If you want to score, you have to work harder and perform better than those around you. To put it in terms commonly used by players, strategy battles are PvE and duel battles are PvP. Take duel battles for example, where you compete with other students, stealing and losing points in a competitive ranking system, with the maximum score for duel battles at 30%. The top 10% would score 27% out of a perfect 30%, while the top 50% would score 15% of the total 30%. The same applies to strategy battles. Lee Soo-dak circled the contents he had written on the blackboard. Lastly, he wrote 100% at the bottom of the list. Written exams 30%. Attitude score 10%. Strategy battle 30%. Duel battle 30%. Total score 100%. The evaluation criteria for the first semester of the first year are as follows. I will give you time for questions. If anyone has any questions, raise your hand now. No one raised their hand. It was unclear whether this was because everyone completely understood Lee Soo-dak's explanation, or because they were afraid that raising their hand might lead to immediate and severe consequences. No questions. Good. Today, we will be conducting a placement test to provide some light discrimination between students. Everyone, move to the arena. Perhaps it was due to the menacing aura that Lee Soo-dak had exuded throughout his explanation, but the entire class seemed tense and on edge as they moved toward the arena. In contrast, Go Hyanwoo's face was slightly flushed with excitement. So this is what Shin Hyung meant by big day yesterday. I am quite looking forward to it. Right? You seem like someone who would enjoy a good duel. Duels with strong opponents are always fun. But how does this placement test work? I held out 3 fingers. You'll be randomly matched with 3 others, and you earn points for each victory. 300 points per win. So if you win all 3 matches, you get as much as 900 points. Exactly. And if you lose or draw, do you lose points as well? You don't lose points, just nothing happens. A record of 1 win, 1 draw, and 1 loss would be 300 points. 0 points, 0 points. I see, I understand. If everyone begins the competition with 0 points, it's inevitable that lower-ranking students will be at a disadvantage. To prevent this, at least to some extent, a placement test was conducted on the first day, and points were allocated in increments of 300 based on performance. Led by Lee Soo-dok, Class 3 soon joined the other first-year students and then all converged towards the arena together. This is because even though the classes were different, the placement test was held at the same time for all first years. After walking a bit, a massive dome-shaped building filled my field of vision. The structure of the arena was similar to modern stadiums, with the central stage where the games took place surrounded by spectator seats. The difference lay in that stage. It was the epitome of various magical and scientific technologies, capable of creating every imaginable type of terrain. This included volcanic areas where meteorites fell and lava flowed, canyons with lightning striking like rain, and even deep lakes. At that moment, however, there was nothing special, just gray tiles laid out. Above them floated scoreboards, but instead of scores, something else was written on them since the placement test hadn't started yet. MAP, Round Arena. Rule, Deathmatch 5-minute limit. The 2 elements that make up a duel are the map environment and the rule. As you carry out requests as a hero, you realize that overpowering the opponent is not the only objective. A prime example is escort missions. In these missions, protecting the key figures takes precedence over subduing assassins. If you just foolishly focus on enhancing your power, you will inevitably find yourself in the tragic situation where you wipe out your enemies with overwhelming force, but the very individuals you were supposed to protect end up dead. In order to prepare students for various environments and situations, the rules of duel battles change frequently. The rule for this particular placement test, Deathmatch, was a regular feature in duel battles. It was a simple rule. The match wouldn't end until one person either ran out of all their stamina, became unable to fight, or declared defeat. The additional 5-minute limit rule meant that if there was no clear winner within 5 minutes, the match would conclude as either a victory by decision or a draw. The environment was a round arena. It was a circular space that was just the right size for 2 people to fight. The large central stage was divided into several independent fighting rings, each set to host 1-on-1 student battles. After seating the students of Class 3 in the spectator area, Lee Soo-dok explained these details. The teacher from the neighboring class seemed to be giving a similar explanation. A short distance away. Let's begin. The students called should head to the arena. Choi Jang-pil, Park Kyung-ah. 1 male student and 1 female student stood up. As soon as they stepped onto the magical circle in front of the central stage, they disappeared for a moment only to reappear in one of the several fighting rings. The content of the scoreboard above changed to display. Choi Jang-pil 100% versus Park Kyung-ah 100%. Remaining time 5 o'clock. After confirming that everything was ready, Lee Soo-dok nodded his head. 3, 2, 1, start. As soon as the match started, both contestants began to gather mana without any delay, shrouding themselves in swirling mana-like armor. They swiftly closed the distance and collided in the center with a loud crash. Boom! With that explosion, the numbers on the scoreboard shifted. Choi Jang-pil 89% versus Park Kyung-ah 92%. Remaining time for 43. Lee Soo-dok checked the scoreboard briefly before turning his attention elsewhere. There were still many empty arenas and a long list of names to call. Next, Go Hyan-woo, Won Hyuk. Oh, it's my turn. Go Hyan-woo was visibly excited and sprang up from his seat. He seemed to be already itching for action as he began to absent-mindedly stroke the iron sword at his waist. I'll be back. Go for it and do well. While I was waiting for my turn, I brought up the quest that had just arrived. Side quest, placement test. Objective, achieve a mid-tier or higher rank on the placement test. Win at least once in the dual battle placement test 0 above 1. Rank in the top 50% in the strategy battle placement test current ranking, and above A. Reward, copy skill slot +1. All I had to do was secure at least one victory in the duel battle, and achieve a mid-tier or higher rank in the strategy battle placement test. To put it simply, this task was a piece of cake, so in reality, it was no different from a passing quest for me. But the truly important matter was something else: scouting. The placement test wasn't just about performing well personally. This dual battle test was happening in front of the entire first-year gathering. This meant you could observe every detail of the other students' matches. Gathering various pieces of information was crucial for everyone. If you could understand the other students' weapons, skills, tendencies, habits, and weaknesses in advance, it would be immensely useful in the dual battles throughout the semester. Those who were fidgeting and just waiting for their turn were useless. The quick-witted ones had already fixed their gazes on the arena, because they want to absorb every bit of information from even a single battle. This was a great opportunity for me as well. My first objective was to find out if there are any talents that can be nurtured to X rank in the future, and the second objective was to remember students with skills or traits worth copying. Both these were crucial in the long term. I can see that one has a good sense of things. The specs are a bit lacking, but they're not falling behind, worth nurturing. That one's just flashy. It's all about the equipment. That's a rare skill. I'll mark that down. While I was scrutinizing each match, my name was eventually called. Kim Ho, Hong Yin Hua. I glanced around and noticed that no one else stood up alongside me. Hong Yin Hua must be from a different class. They probably had similar thoughts somewhere in the audience about now. As I stepped onto a small teleportation magic circle, my view changed instantly. I had been transported inside a round arena. Soon, someone else was summoned on the opposite magic circle. A female student with red hair. Her not-so-long staff was embedded with a large ruby. A student of the Ruby Magic Tower. A magic tower that specializes in fire-type magic, thanks to his destructive power and spatial control. The Ruby Magic Tower's master was an S-class hero and a frequent main pick for me. Facing image from such a magic tower as my opponent gave me mixed feelings. It felt like a sense of guilt for bullying a subordinate's disciple. Poor thing. But what can I do? It's a placement test. I have to win. I just needed her to be fooled by my act for a mere 5 minutes. Hong Yin Hua was a promising talent who bore the expectations of the Ruby Magic Tower. There was even talk among the elders of the Magic Tower that she should be chosen as the next master of the tower. To make this a reality, she first needed to conquer this Dragon Slayer Academy by surpassing notable geniuses like the disciple of Sword Marquis, daughter of the Topaz Magic Tower, and other heirs of prestigious families. She would stand unopposed at the summit. Then, upon graduation, no one could deny her the position of Tower Master if she claimed it. This placement test was her grand first step towards that goal. However, the man who appeared as her first opponent only brought her disappointment. Kim Ho. It's a name I've never heard of, even in a placement test. Defeating a somewhat renowned opponent would have boosted her reputation more. It felt somewhat deflating, and the weapon he brought was pathetic. At first glance, it seemed to be the Earth Staff E. Even apprentice mages would overlook such a mediocre item. It was a stuff that only slightly amplified the effects of Earth-type and protective magic. But to her, it was nothing more than a wooden stick. He's not an Earth mage. Although she didn't have a very good relationship with the Emerald Magic Tower, she was familiar with its mages. She was certain this man wasn't from the Emerald Magic Tower. The fact that he was not related to the Emerald Magic Tower meant that the possibility of him having learned Earth-type magic was drastically low. By process of elimination, it seemed more likely that he chose the Earth Staff E for its defensive or utility magic support, rather than for Earth magic itself. Furthermore, his use of a long staff suggested he favored power over mobility, which was typical of what you'd call a cannon-type mage. A support. A cannon-type mage. Then her strategy was clear. I'll aim for a quick and decisive victory. Kim Ho 100% versus Hong Yin Hua 100%. Remaining time 5 o'clock. As both sides took their positions, the scoreboard began the countdown. 3, 2, 1, start. As soon as the match started, Hong Yin Hua extended her stuff forward. Combustion. Bang. The opponent's upper body was engulfed in a small flame explosion. It was the E-grade fire spell of combustion. Though its destructive power was somewhat lacking, it had very short casting time. She could have easily penetrated any protective magic that the seemingly unimpressive support might cast. but a drawn-out match was not what she desired. She aimed for a clean and overwhelming victory, giving her opponent no chance to cast any magic. "Wow, did you see that casting?" Something flashed, but it must have been a spell, as expected of the Ruby Magic Tower. Admiring comments from the audience reached her ears. To Hong Yianhua, such praise was too familiar. However, Kim Ho 100% versus Hong Yianhua 100%. Remaining time for 41. When she checked the scoreboard, she couldn't believe her eyes. She had expected that it wouldn't end with just that, but 100%. Doesn't that mean she didn't even inflict 1% damage on her opponent? Looking back, she saw Kim Ho still standing there, casually dangling his arms. What's going on? Could it be that the Earth Staff was a decoy, and he was actually wearing a defensive artifact? Then how about this? Hong Yianhua gathered her mana and began to cast once more. She formed a sphere of mana above her staff and filled it with fire magic. Kim Ho, who had been standing still, made his first movement. He tilted his staff diagonally in a slow motion and stretched out his opposite hand forward. It seemed like a gesture to disperse the opponent's magic with his hand. Seeing this, Hong Yianhua frowned. It was a movement no one could be ignorant of. Dispel. A spell for negating magic, but in her understanding, dispel was a spell used covertly, without giving away any hint. Such an overt act of casting carried one of these two implications. I am a novice and can't use dispel properly. Or, I can use it blatantly against someone like you, and it will still work. That's pissing me off. Though she thought the latter option was a bit of a stretch, Hong Yian was mood-soured regardless. Contrary to her boiling emotions, she cooled her head and focused on completing the spell. Regardless, she already realized that he intended to use dispel. If that was the case, all she needed to do was to quickly complete her spell and release it before dispel could take effect. Kim Ho still had one hand stretched out towards her. However, seeing that her magic was not being interfered with, it seemed he had yet to find the right timing. Although he maintained a calm expression, she guessed that he was feeling the pressure inside. Hong Yianhua smiled triumphantly. It's too late already. A huge ball of flame the size of a human body was completed. Hong Yianhua hurled it directly at her opponent. Dare to play tricks against me? I'll make you regret it. Flame orb. Boom. The blazing fireball engulfed Kim Ho's body. The fireball erupted once again, engulfing the entire area in flames. Feeling the heat brushing against her cheeks, Hong Yianhua raised the corner of her mouth in a smile. It's over. If he had been hit by the flame orb in a real battle, he would have been reduced to ashes. But their school uniform had its own D-rank protective magic, and various safety measures protected students in the arena, so he wouldn't have died, of course. It was clear he was now in no condition to continue the fight. However, Kim Ho 100% versus Hong Yianhua 100%. Remaining time, 3:58. Hong Yian mouth slowly opened as she checked the scoreboard. When she hurriedly turned her gaze to the front, she saw Kim Ho slowly emerging from the diminishing flames. He was unharmed. Just like before, he was standing there as if nothing had happened, as if he were saying that this level of flames didn't bother him at all. Did he really use dispel? Otherwise, there was no explanation for why he appeared unscathed. Did he use dispel in that brief moment just before the magic hit, causing it to dissipate? But was it even possible to dispel a completed spell? What surprised Hong Yianhua the most, however, was that she couldn't even detect when he used dispel. A shiver ran down her spine. That's right, I let my guard down. She reprimanded herself for underestimating her opponent based solely on his outward appearance. After all, this man had to enter the Dragon Slayer Academy after overcoming numerous competitions as a hero candidate. He couldn't be an easy opponent. Taking a deep breath, she tightened her grip on her staff. There was a good chance that her next spell could be disrupted as well. In that case, she decided to compete using magic circle-based spells that were less susceptible to dispelling. Boom! Hong Yianhua gathered up her mana. The mana emanating from the ruby drew a crimson magic circle beneath Kim Ho's feet. His gaze briefly lowered to inspect the magic circle. Magic would promptly fall to the location where the magic circle appeared. It was a simple cause and effect relationship that anyone could understand. Therefore, if a magic circle appeared beneath one's feet, it was only natural to move as far away from it as possible. Hong Yianhua had anticipated that Kim Ho would hastily evade, so she had prepared her next move to trap him. However, he's not moving. It seemed like Kim Ho intended to hold his ground. Instead of dodging, he slammed his staff into the ground. This meant that he completely abandoned even the slightest amount of mobility he had, considering that he was likely to be a support. It appeared he intended to confront her head-on with powerful defensive magic. Ha ha ha. Hong Yanhua couldn't help but laugh in disbelief. There was no way he couldn't know that she came from the Ruby Magic Tower. Even though he knew that her fire magic was unmatched in terms of destructive power, he dared to challenge her head-on with defensive magic. If so, great. Flash. The ruby embedded in her staff emitted a radiant glow. The diameter of the red magic circle doubled, with additional runes filling the empty spaces, and it took on an even more vivid shade of red. Meanwhile, Kim Ho remained as still as a statue, and his staff was firmly planted in the ground, simply waiting for her to make a move. To Hong Yanhua, it seemed as if he was silently asking, "So, when are you going to use your magic? No need to rush me. I'm about to use it now. Let's see you try to block this." Fire pillar. Whoosh. A towering pillar of fire erupted from the huge magic circle below him. Perhaps it was due to the menacing aura that Lee Su-dak had exuded throughout his explanation, but the entire class seemed tense and on edge as they moved toward the arena. In contrast, Go Hyanwoo's face was slightly flushed with excitement. So this is what Shin Hyung meant by big day yesterday. I am quite looking forward to it. Right, you seem like someone who would enjoy a good duel. Duels with strong opponents are always fun. But how does this placement test work? I held out 3 fingers. You'll be randomly matched with 3 others, and you earn points for each victory. 300 points per win. So if you win all 3 matches, you get as much as 900 points. Exactly. And if you lose or draw, do you lose points as well? You don't lose points, just nothing happens. A record of 1 win, 1 draw, and 1 loss would be 300 points. 0 points, 0 points. I see, I understand. If everyone begins the competition with 0 points, it's inevitable that lower-ranking students will be at a disadvantage. To prevent this, at least to some extent, a placement test was conducted on the first day, and points were allocated in increments of 300 based on performance. Led by Lee Su-dak, Class 3 soon joined the other first-year students and then all converged towards the arena together. This is because even though the classes were different, the placement test was held at the same time for all first years. After walking a bit, a massive dome-shaped building filled my field of vision. The structure of the arena was similar to modern stadiums, with the central stage where the games took place surrounded by spectator seats. The difference lay in that stage. It was the epitome of various magical and scientific technologies, capable of creating every imaginable type of terrain. This included volcanic areas where meteorites fell and lava flowed, canyons with lightning striking like rain, and even deep lakes. At that moment, however, there was nothing special, just gray tiles laid out. Above them floated scoreboards, but instead of scores, something else was written on them since the placement test hadn't started yet. MAP, Round Arena. Rule, Deathmatch 5-minute limit. The 2 elements that make up a duel are the map environment and the rule. As you carry out requests as a hero, you realize that overpowering the opponent is not the only objective. A prime example is escort missions. In these missions, protecting the key figures takes precedence over subduing assassins. If you just foolishly focus on enhancing your power, you will inevitably find yourself in the tragic situation where you wipe out your enemies with overwhelming force, but the very individuals you were supposed to protect end up dead. In order to prepare students for various environments and situations, the rules of duel battles change frequently. The rule for this particular placement test, Deathmatch, was a regular feature in duel battles. It was a simple rule. The match wouldn't end until one person either ran out of all their stamina, became unable to fight, or declared defeat. The additional 5-minute limit rule meant that if there was no clear winner within 5 minutes, the match would conclude as either a victory by decision or a draw. The environment was a round arena. It was a circular space that was just the right size for 2 people to fight. The large central stage was divided into several independent fighting rings, each set to host 1-on-1 student battles. After seating the students of Class 3 in the spectator area, Lee Su-dak explained these details. The teacher from the neighboring class seemed to be giving a similar explanation. A short distance away. Let's begin. The students called should head to the arena. Choi Jang-pil, Park Kyung-na. 1 male student and 1 female student stood up. As soon as they stepped onto the magical circle in front of the central stage, they disappeared for a moment only to reappear in one of the several fighting rings. The content of the scoreboard above changed to display. Choi Jang-pil 100% versus Park Kyung-ah 100%. Remaining time 5 o'clock. After confirming that everything was ready, Lee Soo-dok nodded his head. 3, 2, 1, start. As soon as the match started, both contestants began to gather mana without any delay, shrouding themselves in swirling mana-like armor. They swiftly closed the distance and collided in the center with a loud crash. Boom! With that explosion, the numbers on the scoreboard shifted. Choi Jang-pil 89% versus Park Kyung-ah 92%. Remaining time for 43. Lee Soo-dok checked the scoreboard briefly before turning his attention elsewhere. There were still many empty arenas and a long list of names to call. Next, Go Hyan-woo, Won Hyuk. Oh, it's my turn. Go Hyan-woo was visibly excited and sprang up from his seat. He seemed to be already itching for action as he began to absent-mindedly stroke the iron sword at his waist. I'll be back. Go for it and do well. While I was waiting for my turn, I brought up the quest that had just arrived. Side quest, placement test. Objective, achieve a mid-tier or higher rank on the placement test. Win at least once in the dual battle placement test 0 above 1. Rank in the top 50% in the strategy battle placement test current ranking, and above A. Reward, copy skill slot +1. All I had to do was secure at least one victory in the dual battle, and achieve a mid-tier or higher rank in the strategy battle placement test. To put it simply, this task was a piece of cake, so in reality, it was no different from a passing quest for me. But the truly important matter was something else. Scouting. The placement test wasn't just about performing well personally. This dual battle test was happening in front of the entire first-year gathering. This meant you could observe every detail of the other students' matches. Gathering various pieces of information was crucial for everyone. If you could understand the other students' weapons, skills, tendencies, habits, and weaknesses in advance, it would be immensely useful in the dual battles throughout the semester. Those who were fidgeting and just waiting for their turn were useless. The quick-witted ones had already fixed their gazes on the arena, because they want to absorb every bit of information from even a single battle. This was a great opportunity for me as well. My first objective was to find out if there are any talents that can be nurtured to X rank in the future. And the second objective was to remember students with skills or traits worth copying. Both these were crucial in the long term. I can see that one has a good sense of things. The specs are a bit lacking, but they're not falling behind, worth nurturing. That one's just flashy. It's all about the equipment. That's a rare skill. I'll mark that down. While I was scrutinizing each match, my name was eventually called. Kim Ho, Hong Yin Hua. I glanced around and noticed that no one else stood up alongside me. Hong Yin Hua must be from a different class. They probably had similar thoughts somewhere in the audience about now. As I stepped onto a small teleportation magic circle, my view changed instantly. I had been transported inside a round arena. Soon, someone else was summoned on the opposite magic circle. A female student with red hair. Her not-so-long staff was embedded with a large ruby. A student of the Ruby Magic Tower. A magic tower that specializes in fire-type magic. Thanks to his destructive power and spatial control, the Ruby Magic Tower's master was an S-class hero and a frequent main pick for me. Facing image from such a magic tower as my opponent gave me mixed feelings. It felt like a sense of guilt for bullying a subordinate's disciple. Poor thing. But what can I do? It's a placement test. I have to win. I just needed her to be fooled by my act for a mere 5 minutes. Hong Yin Hua was a promising talent who bore the expectations of the Ruby Magic Tower. There was even talk among the elders of the Magic Tower that she should be chosen as the next master of the tower. To make this a reality, she first needed to conquer this Dragon Slayer Academy by surpassing notable geniuses like the disciple of Sword Marquis, daughter of the Topaz Magic Tower, and other heirs of prestigious families. She would stand unopposed at the summit. Then, upon graduation, no one could deny her the position of Tower Master if she claimed it. This placement test was her grand first step towards that goal. However, the man who appeared as her first opponent only brought her disappointment. Kim Ho. It's a name I've never heard of, even in a placement test. Defeating a somewhat renowned opponent would have boosted her reputation more. It felt somewhat deflating, and the weapon he brought was pathetic. At first glance, it seemed to be the Earth Staff E. Even apprentice mages would overlook such a mediocre item. It was a stuff that only slightly amplified the effects of Earth-type and protective magic. But to her, it was nothing more than a wooden stick. He's not an Earth much, although she didn't have a very good relationship with the Emerald Magic Tower. She was familiar with its mages. She was certain this man wasn't from the Emerald Magic Tower. The fact that he was not related to the Emerald Magic Tower meant that the possibility of him having learned Earth-type magic was drastically low. By process of elimination, it seemed more likely that he chose the Earth Staffy for its defensive or utility magic support, rather than for Earth magic itself. Furthermore, his use of a long staff suggested he favored power over mobility, which was typical of what you'd call a cannon-type mage. A support. A cannon-type mage. Then her strategy was clear. I'll aim for a quick and decisive victory. Kim Ho 100% versus Hong Yianhua 100%. Remaining time 5 o'clock. As both sides took their positions, the scoreboard began the countdown. 3, 2, 1, start. As soon as the match started, Hong Yianhua extended her stuff forward. Combustion. Bang. The opponent's upper body was engulfed in a small flame explosion. It was the E-grade fire spell of combustion. Though its destructive power was somewhat lacking, it had very short casting time. She could have easily penetrated any protective magic that the seemingly unimpressive support might cast, but a drawn-out match was not what she desired. She aimed for a clean and overwhelming victory, giving her opponent no chance to cast any magic. Wow, did you see that casting? Something flashed, but it must have been a spell, as expected of the Ruby Magic Tower. Admiring comments from the audience reached her ears. To Hong Yianhua, such praise was too familiar. However, Kim Ho 100% versus Hong Yianhua 100%. Remaining time for 41. When she checked the scoreboard, she couldn't believe her eyes. She had expected that it wouldn't end with just that, but 100%. Doesn't that mean she didn't even inflict 1% damage on her opponent? Looking back, she saw Kim Ho still standing there, casually dangling his arms. What's going on? Could it be that the Earth Staff was a decoy, and he was actually wearing a defensive artifact? Then how about this? Hong Yianhua gathered her mana and began to cast once more. She formed a sphere of mana above her staff and filled it with fire magic. Kim Ho, who had been standing still, made his first movement. He tilted his staff diagonally in a slow motion and stretched out his opposite hand forward. It seemed like a gesture to disperse the opponent's magic with his hand. Seeing this, Hong Yianhua frowned. It was a movement no mage could be ignorant of. Dispel. A spell for negating magic, but in her understanding, Dispel was a spell used covertly, without giving away any hint. Such an overt act of casting carried one of these two implications. I am a novice and can't use Dispel properly. Or, I can use it blatantly against someone like you, and it will still work. That's pissing me off. Though she thought the latter option was a bit of a stretch, Hong Yian was mood-soured regardless. Contrary to her boiling emotions, she cooled her head and focused on completing the spell. Regardless, she already realized that he intended to use Dispel. If that was the case, all she needed to do was to quickly complete her spell and release it before Dispel could take effect. Kim Ho still had one hand stretched out towards her. However, seeing that her magic was not being interfered with, it seemed he had yet to find the right timing. Although he maintained a calm expression, she guessed that he was feeling the pressure inside. Hong Yianhua smiled triumphantly. It's too late already. A huge ball of flame the size of a human body was completed. Hong Yianhua hurled it directly at her opponent. Dare to play tricks against me? I'll make you regret it. Flame orb. Boom. The blazing fireball engulfed Kim Ho's body. The fireball erupted once again, engulfing the entire area in flames. Feeling the heat brushing against her cheeks, Hong Yianhua raised the corner of her mouth in a smile. It's over. If he had been hit by the flame orb in a real battle, he would have been reduced to ashes. But their school uniform had its own D-rank protective magic, and various safety measures protected students in the arena, so he wouldn't have died, of course. It was clear he was now in no condition to continue the fight. However, Kim Ho 100% versus Hong Yianhua 100%. Remaining time, 3:58. Hong Yian's mouth slowly opened as she checked the scoreboard. When she hurriedly turned her gaze to the front, she saw Kim Ho slowly emerging from the diminishing flames. He was unharmed. Just like before, he was standing there as if nothing had happened, as if he were saying that this level of flames didn't bother him at all. Did he really use Dispel? Otherwise, there was no explanation for why he appeared unscathed. Did he use Dispel in that brief moment just before the magic hit, causing it to dissipate? But was it even possible to dispel a completed spell? What surprised Hong Yianhua the most, however, was that she couldn't even detect when he used Dispel. A shiver ran down her spine. That's right, I let my guard down. She reprimanded herself for underestimating her opponent based solely on his outward appearance. After all, this man had to enter the Dragon Slayer Academy after overcoming numerous competitions as a hero candidate. He couldn't be an easy opponent. Taking a deep breath, she tightened her grip on her staff. There was a good chance that her next spell could be disrupted as well. In that case, she decided to compete using magic circle-based spells that were less susceptible to dispelling. Boom! Hong Yianhua gathered up her mana. The mana emanating from the ruby drew a crimson magic circle beneath Kim Ho's feet. His gaze briefly lowered to inspect the magic circle. Magic would promptly fall to the location where the magic circle appeared. It was a simple cause and effect relationship that anyone could understand. Therefore, if a magic circle appeared beneath one's feet, it was only natural to move as far away from it as possible. Hong Yianhua had anticipated that Kim Ho would hastily evade, so she had prepared her next move to trap him. However, he's not moving. It seemed like Kim Ho intended to hold his ground. Instead of dodging, he slammed his staff into the ground. This meant that he completely abandoned even the slightest amount of mobility he had. Considering that he was likely to be a support, it appeared he intended to confront her head-on with powerful defensive magic. Ha ha ha. Hong Yianhua couldn't help but laugh in disbelief. There was no way he couldn't know that she came from the Ruby Magic Tower. Even though he knew that her fire magic was unmatched in terms of destructive power, he dared to challenge her head-on with defensive magic. If so, great. Flash. The ruby embedded in her staff emitted a radiant glow. The diameter of the red magic circle doubled, with additional runes filling the empty spaces, and it took on an even more vivid shade of red. Meanwhile, Kim Ho remained as still as a statue, and his staff was firmly planted in the ground, simply waiting for her to make a move. To Hong Yianhua, it seemed as if he was silently asking, "So, when are you going to use your magic? No need to rush me. I'm about to use it now. Let's see you try to block this." Fire pillar. Whoosh. A towering pillar of fire erupted from the huge magic circle below him.